Superintendent.
I'm Marjorie Christensen. I'm on the council and we ranch in Deer Lodge County.
Taylor Erling, fish biologist with Fish Wildlife Parks, and I'm filling in for Bill Shea.
I'm not part of the council, but I'm Miranda from NRDP and I'll be doing the financials. I'm Valerie Firth. I'm representing the Department of Natural Resources and Conservation.
Mick Ringstock, retired, represent Silverville County. Steve Hill, represent Adjourn.
And for the reason of how many people we have online, we would like the folks online to please come off of mute one at a time in the most orderly fashion we can, and to introduce yourselves as well.
Yeah, I think, Miranda,
I
can you
can
call
just go name by name.
That'd be
Yeah,
great, yes, please.
Actually, there are a couple of advisory council members.
Just tell me who we should ask to speak, and then we'll.
Yeah, I think Christy's online.
Christy, can you go, please?
Yes, this is Christy Beal. I'm in Missoula, Montana. I'm a council member and thank you, Mike, for handling.
You're very welcome. Who's next?
I'm just gonna go from the top.
Okay.
But I'm not sure who all the council members are. There's Andrew Gordon.
And Andrew, can you introduce yourself, please? Technological difficulties, moving on. Who we got next?
Hey, can you hear me?
I got you, Andrew. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, sorry about that. This is Andrew Gorder, Legal Policy Director for the Clark Fork Coalition in Missoula. Just representing the coalition today.
Thank you, Andrew. Who's next?
Jessica.
Jessica, could you come off mute, please, and introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Jessica Banaszak. I'm with DQ. I am filling in for Katie Garson-Forba.
DQ, okay. Who's next?
Pat from NRDP.
Pat, can you come off mute, please, and introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Pat Tracy. I'm with WGM Group in Missoula. Just logging in to keep tabs on what's going on. Be involved.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we have a second Pat. That's correct, with NRDP, to introduce yourself.
Hello, this is Pat Kneen with NRDP in Butte.
Wonderful, thanks, Pat. Who else we got?
Sean Frederickson.
Sean Frederickson, if you could come off of mute for us, please, and introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi, thanks, Mike. This is Sean Frederickson with Butte Silverbow.
Wonderful, thank you. And who else?
Greg Engelhardt.
Greg, could you please come off of mute and introduce yourself as well?
Hi, yep, just a member of the public in Missoula who does some nerd work and was interested on listening in.
Wonderful, thank you.
Michael Harris.
Michael, would you be willing to come off mute, please, and introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm Michael Harris with the Attorney General's office.
Thank you, Michael.
John Hook.
John Hooks, can you come off mute, please, and introduce yourself?
Yes, John Hooks with Montana Public Radio.
Jim Kim.
Jim Cambich, could you come off mute, please, and introduce yourself as well? Pat for now, and then Jim, go ahead and butt in if you get off mute.
Jacob Martin.
David, you said?
Jacob.
Jacob Martin, could you come off mute, please, and introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Jake Martin. I'm with the Fish and Wildlife Service in Helena.
Wonderful. Who else?
That's everybody.
That's everybody. And then just because we also have a lot of folks online and they can't see members of the audience, and then Doug, you've already introduced yourself. So just starting, Brian, with you, and then we'll just go around the room, please.
Brian Bartkowiak, Natural Resource Damage Program. Jim Ford, Natural Resource Damage Program.
Back over.
Zach North, John Unlimited. Yeah, I'm Ben Laporte. I'm the Upper Clark Fork Program Manager with Trout Unlimited. Casey Schlepp, Golf Course Superintendent at Butte Country Club.
Perfect. And then back, right?
Ray Vinkey, Natural Resource Damage Program.
Nathan Cook, Natural Resource Damage Program.
Wonderful. So that should be everybody. I don't think we've failed to, no one else has chimed in online since then. Okay. So with that, I think we'll turn it back over to you, Doug. We can move on to.
With that, we're gonna, Miranda, we'll go over the financials for 2024, and this information is also in your packet. to let folks know that you, council members, is a packet in front of you, but members of the audience, if you want, there's a packet on the podium next to you.
Yeah, and also any questions or comment, please note that we will have an opportunity at the end for questions and comment.
That is, thank you, Michael. Important point. So at the end of each section, at the end of the financials, we'll have questions. At the end of the aquatics, we'll have questions. And then at the end of the terrestrial and recreation sections of this, we'll have questions. So if you have questions, please write those down and we'll get to those.
You received a page that has a bunch of definitions and how we make some of these calculations. I'm not gonna go through them in detail, but if you have any questions on those, let me know. That's all that these 3 slides are there, just in case you do have questions. But we're gonna just start out with the main categories of the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Fund. Sorry, that's a lot of words. This number was presented to you last year. It's the same number. There's been no more expenses in this category, the deep groundwater category. So they are almost 693,000 over budget. The contract itself was not over budget. That was due to the transfer to the Parrot and administrative costs that put that over budget. So we are working on a solution to that. The aquatics category has earned an interest this year. And sorry, as a reminder that the state's fiscal year runs from July 1st to June 30th. So that would be, these numbers are July 1st of 2023 to June 30th of 24. So aquatics interest earned is 1.7 million, expenses of almost 1.3 million. General revenue, expenses and liabilities of 124,000. So that leaves us with a cash balance of 37.6 million. Terrestrial has an interest earned of 162,000, expenses of 390,000, general revenue, expenses and liability of 12,000, and a cash balance of 3.5 million. So we have the aquatic reserves. The interest earned there is 614,000. There's no expenses, so it's 13.4 million. The terrestrial reserve, 263,000 in interest. Oops. So 5.7 million cash balance. That leaves the total for interest earned this year of 2.7 million, expenses of 1.6, general revenue, expenses and liabilities of 135,000, and a total for these categories of 59.6 million. We also have under this fund the other encumbered. That is the grants program, which has a balance of 1.7 million. That number of 2,000 down at the bottom, I just wanted to show is the 2 transfers to our education fund. That number is included in the expenses line. I just wanted to call out that those 2 transfers come out of that category. The Dutchman wetlands, that's got a fund balance or a balance of 1.2 million. Milltown, 40,000. There's a total encumbered of 3.3 million. And the entire Upper Clark Fork River Basin fund balance of 62.9 million. So these are some of the other funds that NRDP manages. I did want to point out first that if you did like a mental math, these don't add up, and that's because we were simplifying things for you guys, and we didn't include some of the numbers that factor into that balance, which includes liabilities. So Butte Area 1, 5.6 million cash balance, Park Fork River Fund, 24.1 million, Salter Hill Uplands, 8.4 million. The Parrot revenues of just under 200,000, expenses of 1.8 million, and a balance of 2.8 million. The Seaforth or the Education Fund, that 1 million, that's the transfer from the last plan revision. The 397,000 of expenses, leaving them with a balance of 1.5 million, which includes savings from their previous budgets. That's the financials. If you have any questions.
Where does the Greenway money pay to show the vote? paying the bills come up.
The Greenway, it comes out of,
NRDP is paying Good Silver Bowl, and they're paying the invoices from the Greenway.
yeah. That comes out of the aquatics
Aquatic and Terrestrial.
and terrestrial, it's a split, sorry, you're right.
Is there a special time for them, Doug, or you just pay those bills out of that?
So this is Doug, Martin. The,
Sorry. Veterans.
yeah. The Greenway Service District, gets reimbursed from the aquatic and terrestrial funds at a percentage, a 60-40 split, 60% aquatics, 40% terrestrial. From the 2012 allocation, that's where it comes out of. Out of the money that was allocated in the 2024 revision, or the revision that we got done doing last year, those funds are coming from the aquatic interest, because that's where we had the money. So once we start pulling money from that, it'll come specifically from that fund.
So the 8 million that we gave in 2012 scrap.
There's about $400,000 left in that, from that $8 million.
And then we gave them another,
2.5.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, any other council members that have questions or public questions? Anyone online, please either raise your hand for no one to watch or come off mute, please, and ask questions if you should so have them. Okay, all right, so hearing that, we'll move on to the agenda. Now we'll bring up some project updates from NRDP staff, aquatic and terrestrial. Brian.
Thank you, Mr. Pat.
You're welcome. The floor is yours.
Thank you. As Mike said, I'm Brian Bartkowiak with the Natural Resource Damage Program. I will be giving the aquatic flow and aquatic project updates, and then I'll turn it over to Nathan for some monitoring updates. I do want to point out that in your packet, we have a complete summary of all our projects. We are not going to go through them all in detail, but we are here to answer any questions that you do have about those. One thing that I would like to point out is the council know we added match funding requirements in the 2024 revision. In the tables in those packets, we have match funding. We added a match funding column. I just wanted to note that we didn't go back in time for projects that had match funding, but starting in 2024, we noted the match fund requirements for projects going forward. I say this every year, but I get the privilege to get up here and give this update. But this isn't just NRD doing the work. This is the work of a lot of people, namely the landowners and water users. These projects wouldn't be possible without them. Also working with our project partners, Trout Unlimited, Clark Fork Coalition, and Watershed Restoration Coalition. Thank you guys for all your help. Again, we wouldn't be able to do these projects without you. And then, of course, the tribe, state, federal, and city, county agencies. Thank you all for your support. Getting into the update, refresher priority watersheds, areas, priority 1 stream areas as shown in dark blue on the figure, priority 2 stream areas as shown in light blue. Going over the goals, the aquatic goals, restore the main stem trout fishery by improving recruitment in the tributaries. I'm going to switch sides. Replacing lost trout, angling in the main stem by improving trout populations in the tributaries and maintaining or improving native populations in the upper Clark Fork River Basin to conserve rare and diverse gene pools. Types of projects to achieve these goals are flow augmentation, so any way, shape, or form of getting more water into the tributaries in the main stem, reducing fish entrainment or preventing fish from getting stuck down irrigation ditches, improving both upstream and downstream fish passage, and riparian habitat protection and improvement, and in-stream habitat, and improving stream function. In terms of, flow projects, we actually didn't have any new projects this year. In terms of priority, the highest priority is still the main stem Clark Fork between Warm Springs and Deer Lodge. Second in priority are priority 1 and priority 2 tributaries. This thing does have a pointer, doesn't it?
Yeah, but people can't see it.
Oh,
You
okay.
can't see it on TV.
So here is the, here are the gauge stations in the upper Clark Fork. I will be talking about 2 of them today. The upstream gauge station of the Clark Fork River at the Galen gauge. And then the downstream at the top of the screen is the USGS station at Deer Lodge. Thank you guys for having this meeting early this year. It's good we can have this meeting and we can have the TRC meeting before things get busy by the end of the year. But having these meetings early also means our project partners haven't had a chance to pull their stream gauges. They just pulled their stream gauges a few weeks ago. So I don't have updates of all the temperature and flow and all the ones in between, but I was able to pull some data off of USGS. To say the least, it was a fairly unique flow year. Flow started off fairly high. So this graph goes from April 1 to October 1 on the x-axis. Flow is on the left-hand side of the y-axis. Temperature on the right-hand side. The solid blue line at the bottom is our flow target at Garland. The dashed line is the 20 degrees temperature target for temperature. So anyway, flow started fairly high. We really didn't have any runoff to speak of. And then starting in July 1, things just started crashing and remained that way for most of the summer. You can see at the Galen gauge, we did stay above our flow target for the majority of the year. And we would, of course, like to take full credit for that because that's where the majority of our in-stream flow changes and our flow projects have occurred. But we also do have to acknowledge that this is the top of the watershed with the least amount of irrigation withdrawals. Looking downstream at Deer Lodge, very similar pattern, high in the spring. Really no runoff at all to speak of. And then flow has really just tanked and stayed below. And you can see that the lines are the same, the axes are the same. That solid blue line is our temperature target or our flow target at Deer Lodge. And we were below that for the majority of the summer, as most of you know. The other thing, and it's I didn't point it out on the previous graph, but you can see temperatures got above 20 degrees C, and I think FWP put food owl restrictions in fairly early this year. And so, yeah, that's just kind of where we are in terms of flow. Wasn't a great year. As I mentioned, we don't have the complete reports done, but please look at our website. I have all the flow reports from, I think, 2022 until now up on our website. And there's a link, and I'd be happy to talk about those or answer any other questions you have. Moving on to our aquatics projects. Again, we're not going to talk about all of them, but I would like to highlight 2 of them. One was the Clark Fork River main stem diversions, and particularly the Sagar Lake project. And the other one that TU and Ray have been working on are the Warm Springs Fish Creek Passage projects. You might have seen we've been getting some fairly good press from these projects lately. There's been a lot of stories in local papers. There was even a story in Field and Stream. But in terms of the main stem diversion projects, these are looking at diversions on the main stem of the Clark Fork River. There are 7 of them total, and these have been a very collaborative process with our partners, Clark Fork Coalition and Trout Unlimited. Looking at the list, the Albee Beck project was completed by our project partners with very limited funds from us. That was 2 years ago, I believe, and we completed not only change applications on the Helen Johnson ditch, but in conjunction with DEQ's project, eliminated the ditch and put it into a pipeline. We do have, if you remember, this council allocated $750,000 to look at these main stem diversions. TU, through a aquatic ecosystem restoration grant, has brought in over $300,000 in just design work to match these funds. TU also has funding in the tune of about $100 million for, I wish it was $100 million, $1 million for implementation of these projects. And our partner, the Clark Fork Coalition, has already contributed over $1 million in design and construction costs to these projects. Here's kind of the pictures of the problems that we're trying to take care of. You can see how these diversions would not only pose a risk or a problem for boats floating down the river, but also for fish trying to swim up and swim down. Moving to Sagar Lane, this is a project NRD in cooperation with our partners got started this fall. Got two components, basically improving the diversion structure itself, allowing both recreational and fish passage, and also improving the infrastructure as well. Again, and I will admit that some of these funds are double dipped from the previous slide, but CFC through their Resource Legacies Fund has contributed $50,000 for design. They started this project, they started the design, and we picked up from their conceptual design and finalized it. They have another $100,000 allocated for construction of this project. They were able to seek match from FWP's Future Fishery Program in the tune of $50,000 plus their in-kind contributions. And then this project is going to be matched for the bigger, both for the design for the other main stem diversion projects. So picture on the left is the irrigation diversion before construction. You can see again footage and fish passage problems. Picture on the right, and I apologize, slightly different angle, but you can see on the right hand of the picture, you can see the inlet to the irrigation diversion. That is actually the same diversion at very similar flow rates. And so you can see how passage has been greatly improved while maintaining irrigation efficiency. Again, another project to highlight are Warm Springs Native Fish Passage projects. The goals of these projects, and this is mainly Ray's project that I get to talk on his behalf and on behalf of our project partners. The goal is to pass native bull trout around these diversions. So Caleb and his techs actually go out and selectively pass bull trout along these diversions. This has a resource benefit of 64 miles of reconnected high quality bull trout habitat. This again was in partnership with TU, FWP, the Forest Service, Butte Silver, Anaconda, and Army Corps of Engineers. The total cost of this project is $1.5 million, with about $700,000 being brought to match by TU and another $50,000 from the Fish and Wildlife Service. Next up, in terms of these diversions, they're going to start looking at the Gardner diversion just downstream of Anaconda, as well as Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Wildlife Management Area diversion on Warm Springs Creek. And then we're going to hold your question. We're going to take a break for questions after Nathan talks about monitoring.
Sure. You too. You can start. Thanks, Brian. I'm Nathan Cook. I'm going to be talking today about aquatic monitoring, and I'm going to be focusing in on the low brown trout numbers, low fish numbers in general in the upper Clark Fork River between Warm Springs and Deer Lodge. And so I'm going to be putting some charts up there that sort of illustrate this trend. So what we're looking at here is brown trout per mile. That's on your y-axis there. Over time. So there's years on the x-axis at several different sections, monitoring sections that FWP does every year. So we can see at the pH shack section, that's the one on your left there. That's the most upstream section that FWP does on the Clark Fork. We see this trend where there was kind of a peak in numbers around 2013, 2014. That was after a couple of good flow years. The fishery responded. We had high numbers, but since then it's declined. and declined to the point where 2023, at all these sections upstream of Deer Lodge, brown trout numbers were at or near historic lows. And that's, you know, in spite of considerable progress that's gone on with cleanup and restoration efforts. So not the trend we would like to see. You compare that with FWP's monitoring downstream of Deer Lodge, that decreasing trend since 2013 or in general just isn't there. They've been more stable over time, even slightly increasing at the Williams Town intersection, which is just downstream of Deer Lodge. At these two sections, which are downstream of Deer Lodge, FWP actually captures enough cutthroat trout to generate population estimates. And so those are these red bars you're seeing here. The gray bars are still brown trout. So declining trend in brown trout up between Deer Lodge and Warm Springs, stable trends downstream of Deer Lodge. And that stable trend is also present in the tributary. So this record low collapse of the fishery is really confined to this section of the Clark Fork between Deer Lodge and Warm Springs. So the question is, why is that? What's going on? Well, to get at that, you may remember as part of the 2024 restoration plan revision, $1 million was allocated to investigate factors that are currently limiting the fishery. And so since then, we've been working, I've been working on drafting a plan for this investigation, coming up with a budget, and working with our partners in terms of what this plan should look like and how to implement it. It's been sort of a moving target as opportunities and challenges have presented themselves. And so, like I said, this involved a lot of coordination with our partners. There's a lot of folks doing good research and monitoring in Clark Fork already. So we really want to leverage those efforts. And of course, we have contractors we can also work with to fill data gaps. So this plan has kind of three broad components to it. The first one, and kind of the big one, is water quality. Second one is fisheries research. It's the fish we're concerned about. And then habitat and geomorphology. And I'll kind of go through those in a little more detail in the next few slides. I'm going to go through this stuff really fast for the sake of time. If you have any questions, please bring them up at the end. Come find me during the break or email, call at some other time. So one of the main water quality actions that we're taking is working with the USGS along with FWP and DEQ. And we're coming up with a proposal to expand the Clark Fork long-term monitoring network. That's essentially USGS's flow monitoring gauging stations. The same gauging stations where graphs like Brian showed during the flow presentation, you can go online and look at real-time data on things like flow and temperature. And this network is funded by EPA. So this proposal is going to go to EPA to actually add a new monitoring site just at the downstream, just at the outfall of the Warm Springs ponds. These ponds provide a lot of water to the Clark Fork and also have an impact on water quality and temperature. We're also looking at adding new parameters to this monitoring network, things like temperature, dissolved oxygen, and turbidity. Some of these sections have some of these parameters, but we're trying to get these new parameters at all these sections between Deer Lodge and Warm Springs. We're also looking at adding continuous ammonia and metals sampling at two different sites. So this will be a rigorous and continuous data collection effort because it's through the USGS who does really great work. And to me, it really forms the foundation, sort of backbone that we can build other studies on top of going forward. One of those other studies is a study with Montana Tech, specifically Alicia Cox and Paul Helfrich. You may remember Paul was in front of the council in 2022 talking about his PhD research, and what their lab is doing is they're basically trying to take geochemical information, water chemistry information, and relate it to the microbial community that they measured through genomic techniques. And so we're working with them to use this approach, look at over 70 different geochemical parameters, and relate those to various ecological metrics on the Clark Fork. So things like fish numbers, what does the microbe community look like? What does the invertebrate community look like? And so this is really a new way of looking at water quality that no one's done on the Clark Fork before. Forest fisheries research, this is the work that Caleb and his crew have developed a study plan for. And in addition to other sort of routine population estimate monitoring, we really started focusing on these kind of new components. And the first one is early age class monitoring. That's basically just getting their hands on smaller fish. The smaller fish really seem to be ones that are missing from the population currently leading to the lack of recruitment to that population. Also proposing to do a cage fish study to look at where and when mortality might be occurring. They're looking at fish out migrating from the tributaries and tagging them and trying to follow them around. And then looking at brown trout reproduction and the success of that reproduction. The third component, again, was habitat and geomorphology. And so what we're doing there is really trying to get quantitative data. So quantitative data on what does fish habitat look like in the river right now? And we can use that data to kind of look at the quality of that habitat and also look at how it's going to change over time. So change over time naturally or change after remediation and that sort of thing. So this chart on the right here is a map of aquatic habitat in phase 7, which is due to be remediated over the next year or two. And so we'll be able to look at current condition habitat there and come back and see how it changes after remediation, 5 years down the road, et cetera. We're also working with Montana Tech to look at cold water refuge habitat. Roger Nagasetti and a PhD student named Maggie Olson have been using drones to map things like tributary inputs, spring inputs, cold pools in the Clark Fork and also elsewhere like on the Thompson River. And so they're using this drone technology to map where these habitats are and come up with strategies to maintain or enhance them. Again, I went over these things really quickly, but I just want to emphasize that there are a lot of folks out there doing good monitoring and research on the Clark Fork River that we can work with. It's really kind of a luxury. The challenge and the task that I've been assigned is basically to try to coordinate all that. And that's just some of the things we're working on right now. I'll be back probably next fall to give you an update on these studies and probably some new ones. But in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out with any questions or comments. That's what I've got for monitoring. I think if you have any questions for myself or Brian, now's the time.
So we'll start out with questions from the council here in person. Do we have questions? Mick Ringsack, go ahead.
Rick Ringside, I have a question. It's not directly related to the Clark Fork. But there was the articles 2 weeks ago about the havoc the ATVs are causing on the big hole. And I'm assuming we have a similar project, a problem here to a degree, or not?
On the Clark Fork specifically, or just in Montana?
Clark.
I haven't seen many folks driving around on the Clark Fork, and certainly not impacting the habitat to a point of be hurting the population. If there's a rancher that happens to cross the creek during low water to get to the other side.
Well, we got you statewide. I'd love to get your.
Yeah, it's not a problem that we're aware of.
But there's a being we have you with your expertise. What's your opinion on statewide?
On statewide, well, there's the Stream Protection Act prohibits that. So there's regulatory mechanism to go after those people. So hopefully, I don't know if they've caught them or. I'm not
enforcing the law.
Yeah. David's looking at me. It doesn't seem to be something he's seen a lot in his area. But.
Yeah, Caleb Erling with All Parks. Yeah, I think it was kind of an isolated incident. I don't know that it's a big problem statewide. I'm sure there's some other isolated spots.
Thank you both.
Any other questions? Steve Hill?
Yeah, for Brian, Steve Hill from Anaconda. I noticed in the summary on Silver Lake, some roadblocks to getting some of the water at Silver Lake to augment warm springs and then what's the problem?
So TU really led that charge this year. They were able to potentially secure some Columbia Basin Water Transaction Program funding. to fund a release, and all the pieces just weren't able to fall into place with an agreement with UCFRB to make that happen. And I don't know if Jim's still online and wants to add more to it, but it's, I think UCFRB, and JP was on our, Greenway tour. I think that they're really struggling with, improving their system and what they have and how to use that system before they, commit to doing a release. And Jim, if you're online, please jump in if you want to say anything.
Reminder.
Sure, you're exactly correct, Brian. That's where we're at. We're going out to bid here pretty quick. All the vintage equipment telemetry is, of what there is 1962 vintage. That'll all be replaced here fairly quick. Hopefully ready to go this spring and installed by June. And that's our time frame right now. We're just going out to bid on all those projects pretty quick, and our designs there. We did come to an approval. They had the money. The problem was, quite frankly, it wasn't enough. And by the time it all came to put together, you guys thought it was too late. We tried to come in with some, an interim like we did the last few years. But I think it was a little bit too late to work on it. But it's something that we're very open to, and we're willing to do whatever we can to do our part in making that as healthy as can be for the Clark Fork and the basin eventually. So thank you.
Thank you. And that, for the record, that was Jim Cambish with UCFRB speaking just now. Any other comments from our council, either here or online? Hearing none, I'll move it to the public if there's any questions from the public in person. If so, you can step up to the podium and speak. And if not, we'll transfer to online if anyone online from the public has any question or comment. Reminder to take yourself off mute. Okay.
Oh, one person has their hand raised.
We have a hand raised?
Yeah.
Who's the name?
Stark, it actually seems like, it's a member of the council that he must have joined later.
Okay, perfect. Chris, could you please take yourself off mute, get your hand raised online to for your question or comment to be presented?
I believe I'm muted. Unmuted.
You are muted. You have a bit of an echo, Chris.
Simple question. Invertebrate toxicity causing death of the trout.
I'm going to repeat that back to everyone just because there is a little bit of an echo, but I heard invertebrate toxicity causing death to the trout. Question mark.
Is that, can we capture his question?
I believe, yeah, asking if invertebrates are having toxicity issues that are causing issues with death in trout.
So invertebrate metals, the big five metals that are in the Clark Fork: copper, arsenic, that's a metal void, excuse me, lead. I'm not taking pressure.
Zinc,
cadmium. Those are monitored by USGS, DQ, others, and trends in metals in invertebrates has been relatively stable over this time period when we've seen the fish decline. If not, those metal burdens in invertebrates has declined. So there's no evidence that metals, the ones that we always talk about, have increased in invertebrates, and those invertebrates are providing an increased source to the fish. If there's some other compound that we're not looking for in those invertebrates, that's another question, and that's one of those data gaps we might need to look at.
Perfect. Chris, did that answer your question properly?
Yes, I'll be sending you some information.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Chris.
Anyone else online that has comments or question? No other hands raised? Okay, so at this point,
We're gonna go on to terrestrial, we're gonna get the terrestrial and recreation done, and then we'll have a break.
we're gonna skip our break that was scheduled right now and move back to after our presentation on aquatics and terrestrial. Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm Vinkey with the Natural Resource Damage Program. I'll give you a brief update on some work we did for terrestrial projects as well as recreation projects in 2024. So just a little bit of background first off. So the Natural Resource Damage Program worked with Fish, Wildlife and Parks, University of Montana, and a whole number of cooperators in 2010 to build a restoration, basically a prioritization plan to direct restoration expenditures in the watershed. As a result of that terrestrial prioritization plan, we're able to take 2.25 million acres, which is roughly the acreage in watershed, and prioritize where we're going to work and split it into 8 landscapes. Essentially, we used existing data on wildlife populations, habitat, as well as places where there were already known protections, conservation easements, for example. So the result was, again, eight we call them priority landscapes to work in. And then also one thing to note is any riparian area in the entire watershed is priority for work because of the disproportionate value that riparian habitats have for fish and wildlife. So our goals across the watershed were to protect high priority lands and to enhance high priority habitats. In order to do so, we've completed public land acquisitions as well as placed conservation easements on some private properties. And we pursue habitat enhancement projects on shrub grasslands, riparian or wetland habitats, and some priority forest habitat types. To date, we've worked with at least 8 private landowners as well as a DNRC on 5 different parcels to implement habitat enhancement projects. And again, we recognize in the restoration plans continue to the importance that private lands play to conservation of wildlife. And that's really actually one of the key foci of our work is working with private landowners, state landowners, and as well as the state. In 2024, we worked on the Hollenbeck Ranch, which is well, you guys can't see the pointers, but it's in the very north end of the map here, near Gold Creek, just to the east of Drummond. So we worked with the Hollenbeck family to develop 4 water developments on that property, with the goal being to remove cattle grazing pressure from riparian areas, redistribute that cattle grazing to the uplands, and thereby conserve riparian habitat. So, yeah, so that was a bit of a lift, and I think it's really turned out to a project that we're all proud of. So, in 2025, what we're looking at is 2 different properties where we'll be removing conifers that are encroaching on native grassland habitats. The goal there, again, is to conserve grassland species which are associated with native grasslands, but losing habitat because of encroaching Douglas fir and junipers. So in 2025, we'll be looking at implementing those conifer removal projects on 105 acres on the Hollenbeck Ranch, as well as 150 acres up Rock Creek on DNRC lands. Also in 2024 and on an ongoing basis, we're monitoring the success and the challenges associated with some of these habitat enhancement projects to date. So one property that some of you are familiar with anyway is the Clark Fork River Ranch. This is a property that the Natural Resource Damage Program acquired in 2019. It's 2,650 acres. And one thing that's really cool about that property is it allows us to meet multiple restoration goals that the program has. We're able to integrate remediation and restoration, or we will, because we're gonna, when the remedial work occurs along the river, we're gonna be able to simultaneously design wetlands and other habitat enhancement projects at the same time as we're removing levels. There's 5 miles of river frontage along the Clark Fork River Ranch, so that's going to provide and does provide public access for hunting, especially there's a lot of waterfowl hunters who use it. And of course, all the riparian habitats and the floodplain habitats that are associated with that. Let's see, in purchasing the ranch, we replaced lost grasslands and shrub grasslands and uplands, as well as riparian habitats. Ownership allows us the opportunity to work in enhancement of those habitat types. And another neat element of this is, we spoke some about this last year, but currently we're leasing the grazing and cropland rights on the property to the neighbor in order to basically for them to not exercise their water rights in late summer and to leave that water in the river when we need it most. The Clark Fork River Ranch is also a block management area, and it provided almost 600 hunter days in 2023. So a lot of waterfowl hunters, some white-tailed deer used it. In 2024, we basically had kind of standard upkeep essentially for a ranch, which was some maintenance associated with the well, as well as fencing, and operation of pivots. And NRDP is paying for all that maintenance, which essentially enables the parcel to be in agricultural production. So what else? We have ongoing monitoring of both range condition, crop production, and water use on the ranch. So it's kind of a unique experiment for the state to manage a ranch, and I think it's going to allow us to meet a number of our restoration goals. All right. Also speaking of private lands, the natural resource damage has paid in part for 3 conservation easements in the watershed. They're monitored by our partners with Montana Land Reliance and Five Valleys Land Trust. All those properties require some public access and provided almost 4,000 hunter days in 2020. The Five Valleys and Montana Land Reliance did complete their monitoring. I was able to go out on one of those trips, and all the properties were found to be in compliance with their terms. And the landowners are satisfied right now with how things are going. So, and I think that's all I have for terrestrial. So I'll just take a breath, and then we'll talk about recreation. You guys can offer any questions. So. All right, so there are 8 recreation projects identified in the 2024 restoration plan. We're halfway there to meeting them. 4 of them have been completed. In 2024, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks did continue to manage the Milltown State Park. That's, I think, I don't know, to be fair to ask Doug, but I think that really the public use and success of that project has exceeded, I think, what anybody would have originally anticipated. It's an important component of allowing recreation for the community and people to see, restoration work at Milltown. So Fish, Wildlife, and Parks is currently developing 2 fishing access sites, one practically within the site of here at the vet clinic, and also, of course, Bend. The Greenway Service District this year, they didn't do any construction, but they are continuing to negotiate with the railroad relative to some access issues in Durant Canyon. They're continuing planning and design for, to ultimately complete the Greenway. So I know Powell County put in for significant federal grant to work on this multi-county, Powell and Granite County trails planning effort. They weren't successful this time, but they were on sort of the short list for the next round of review. And I know from talking with Amanda Cooley that they're optimistic that they'll be able to secure funding in the future. But there's always uncertainties with finding match. So that's what I have. What do we have for questions?
So council members first here in person. Does anyone have questions? I do have a few, but I'll take it from you and anyone online first with council. So go back to your terrestrials. You know, we've had a lot of leverage through the fabulous partnerships with Trout Unlimited and Parrot Coalition and others in helping to make our fund go longer and go further, and then some great grant writing to find other funds federally. On the terrestrial side, can you kind of elaborate as to who our partners have been and who are they or who could they be?
Sure.
And it seems like we have really great interest in our fish habitats and our fish populations. When it comes to our wildlife, it's not as clear to me, I guess, as to who those partners are.
I guess to be fair, those partners exist and we work extensively with them, but I didn't draw that out in the conversation. So, so speaking to the enhancement projects, I'll just start with Hollenbeck. This year, you know, the Watershed Restoration Coalition was a partner in that and implementing that work as well as their ongoing monitoring. That the Hollenbeck project was funded in part by the Natural Resource Conservation Service as well. And then, of course, the landowners is a key partner in that. And a number of the projects that we worked on terrestrial enhancement, particularly on the DNRC grounds, we did have secured match from the Natural Resource Conservation Service. As far as the easements, again, like I didn't go into transaction details, just giving an overview, but most of those easements had other match funding as well. It wasn't just NRDP who was carrying them funding. Gravely's, we funded most of it. Fox Farm was mostly funded by the feds, just as an example. But there's, you know, multiple funding partners for the easements. Same thing, I didn't emphasize the lands projects that we worked on, but they've all had significant match outside parties as well. So, yeah, I just didn't draw that out. No. We do look for match, and I think as somebody who's worked for their organization, other organizations, I think we've done a good job of finding it.
It's wonderful. Yeah, this is Mike Paffhausen again. I would just ask that we, you know, just like we have with fish, that we work with wildlife conservation groups like the Rocky Mountain Dog Foundation. A great project that was done not in our watershed, but in the Big Hole, was an acquisition of a large ranch, kind of on the north end of the Big Hole Valley by the Mill Creek Highway. It was a $9 million acquisition, came with the water rights, also returned land back to public hands. So it's now owned and operated by the BLM. And it feels like there is in our watershed, there could be potential for that same kind of project work where we can leverage some of their dollars, which are, you know, bountiful. Our foundation is a very well-funded organization. So I'm not sure if we have a history with them or not, but I sure think it would be worthwhile exploring to elongate the use of our funds in the betterment of terrestrials.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. They have been a partner. I'm actually gonna meet with Mike just this evening. Mike Mueller, who's their land staffer. But they worked with us significantly in the purchase of the Garrity Wildlife Management Area and multiple additions that have occurred to that. So our foundation has been a really key partner. So thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, go ahead, Doug.
This is Doug Martin. I'd also like to let Mike know that the Watershed Restoration Coalition, I believe in the Garnets, has also been working a lot with the Mule Deer Foundation to bring in matching funds for doing a lot of conifer coaching.
Yeah, some of the project work that are Mike Paffhausen again, Silver Bow County, we've been pushing at RMEF, and I'm a life member of RMEF for reasons, and Trout Unlimited. But you know, conifer projects, fence removal projects are just common as volunteer projects, and it just feels like there's an opportunity for a shared passion and synergy, and maybe making dollars go a little further. So that would just be a point of encouragement from me.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate that.
All right. Any other council comments or questions? Okay. How about members of the public? Here in person or online. If you are online, please either raise your hand or be brave and come off mute. John Hooks online. John, could you come off of mute, please, and ask your question?
Yeah. Thanks for hearing me. So kind of a general question. I gather we've been talking about restoration in this meeting, so apologies if this is not the right venue, but I was wondering if maybe DEQ or somebody could give a quick update on remediation in the last year, kind of where we're at with the cleanup, and then a kind of related question, curious if with that $63 million balance that is left, if there still is confidence at NRDP and DEQ that will get the job done for the whole cleanup and restoration of the river.
Perfect. I'll turn it over to Doug to answer for you.
John, this is Doug Martin with the Natural Resource Damage Program. So the funding, the $63 million that Miranda talked about that's in the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Restoration Fund, those funds are allocated per the Upper Clark Fork River Basin Aquatic and Terrestrial Resources Restoration Plan. So those funds are allocated to the aquatic and terrestrial resources that we just got done talking about. Those do not go specifically or to the cleanup of the Upper Clark Fork River Basin, or excuse me, the Upper Clark Fork River. That was a separate settlement in 2008 where DEQ got settled for doing the remedial action, and the Natural Resource Damage Program or the state got funding for restoration of the river itself. So that is a separate fund. Miranda did touch on the restoration fund for the river. That's around $24 million. And I would ask that instead of having DEQ give a summary of where we are in the remediation, that could go down a rabbit hole for quite some time. We do have our agenda that we'd like to stick with to keep moving forward with those topics. I know Jessica's online and I'm sure she'd be willing to answer any of your questions at another time. I guess I would ask that, sure.
Yes, I think that's fair, just so that we're clean with the agenda and fair to members of the audience that take time away from their day. So if we could just make sure that we provide a proper introduction of the person that just asked the question to the resource. And then that way, any questions regarding remediation can be answered. Any other members of the public online that indicated a hand raise or present that have any questions? I have one last comment myself, is just on that multi-county trail application that was done. What counties again were you saying that had participated? Granite and Powell.
Yeah, and Amanda Cooley is the lead on that. She's the planner in Powell.
Any conversations between Granite, Powell, Deer Lodge, and Silver Bowl to put a collective application together with the Greenway Service District as a resource? It sure seems like we would have a far greater chance of an application. Has that occurred at all to your guys' knowledge?
I'm sorry, I can't answer that question. I don't know if Doug or Doug has any insight to that or.
I do not, Mike, but it is a good point that we should raise.
Yeah, I just think this is that like scale and grant applications, and that seems like there could be a trail-based benefit of interconnecting all these communities of Butte, Anaconda, Deer Lodge, Drummond, and by way of trail systems that follow the resource. And seems like we could get federal attention
and
with something
and a lot of potential match. From
absolutely.
Which I know is in everybody's interest.
We will follow up.
Thank you, appreciate it. All right, Nick Greensack, go ahead.
Jim, are you still online?
Jim, as a reminder, please come off mute if you are still online. Okay.
He's been working with Amanda Cooley, and you have the multi-county district for the Greenway with Anaconda and Butte. And they've been talking to Amanda about including Greenway in that grant she applied for. But it's a work in progress and they haven't got done yet.
Okay. There you go. Appreciate that, Nick. Okay, so any other last call for public questions or comments step up to the podium or come off of mute, raise your hand, please. Okay, so hearing none, we're gonna take a brief break, scheduled for 10 minutes. So that would put us back at 2:20 PM. We're gonna resume the agenda at 2:20 PM sharp. So please use the restroom and grab waters if necessary. Thank you.
No, that's fine.
Young kids.
Can you hear us online? Can somebody, Christy, can you come off mute? Let us know if you can hear us.
Yeah, so I'm.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So it's gonna be call the meeting back to order if you could. So everyone return your seats, please, when you can, so we can start back up. And we'll begin with our Blacktail Creek project overview. Doug, floor is yours, please.
My name's Doug Martin. Oh, yes, the one thing that we forgot to do in the introductions, and I wanted to bring to folks' attention, is the council lost one of its members. So the council was all reappointed, the Citizens Council was reappointed by the governor. Those of you who wanted to be reappointed, the one member that is actually moving out of the state was Billy from Phillipsburg. And so she is no longer on the council. She has moved over west of here, I'm not sure, to Idaho or to Washington. But for those of you who may know of somebody in the Granite County area, we are looking for a new member within that Peaburg, Drummond area. It doesn't have to be directly in Granite County. It could be one of the neighboring communities there. I know the governor's office has talked to a couple of folks there. I have not heard any commitments on appointments there, but if you do know of somebody, if you'd please let me know, I can pass that on to the governor's office. Also, the other new member, or not a new member, but a representative of the Salish and Kootenai tribes is Chris Stark. He will be replacing Seth Makepeace, who was previously here. Seth is still working for the tribes, but Chris was hired, and he will be representing the tribe at the advisory council in the future. And Chris did ask that question of Nathan during the fish monitoring section. Look forward to talking with Chris in the future, and also looking for a new member. So sorry about that, Mike, but with that, I will talk about the project on Blacktail Creek. And we are looking for some council discussion and input on this, and as we go through this, you will understand why. So the Blacktail Creek project, a little bit of overview. The Blacktail Creek is within one of the priority watersheds that was identified in 2011 and has been part of the Upper Park Fork River Aquatic Restoration Plan. It was allocated approximately $950,000 in 2012, an additional $200,000 in 2018 during the revision in 2018 to work on priority projects. The projects in list of priority for Blacktail Creek is fish passage, fish entrainment, improved fish passage, reduced fish entrainment, improved water quantity, improve water riparian habitat, and then improve in-stream habitat. So those are the watershed priorities, and we have worked on several projects on Blacktail Creek. The highest priority project, for instance, was the Redfern project that Child Unlimited helped us with previously. The project that we're talking about today is there's one project on the Butte Country Club and one project on Butte Silver Bow property just south of the country club. And we have permitted this as one project, so we are looking at this as one project, but there's two components to it. There's the project, the Butte Silver Bow sewer line, which is just south of the golf course, as well as the Butte Country Club diversion and irrigation pond, which is located on the golf course property. And I will go through both of these projects, and as well as give you some history of where we are on these. So this slide talks about where the sewer line is located. the red star shows it's just south of the golf course on Butte Silver Bowl property. This project does inhibit upstream and downstream fish passage, so the goal is to improve fish passage here. We're looking at, we have a design that would build what we call rock weirs or step pools, so fish can actually move up and downstream over this structure, so it would eliminate the fish passage issue. There's some stream banks and revegetation that needs to be worked on the stream banks associated with this project. And as I said, it is located on Butte Silver Bowl property. And our engineer's estimate from the design, we have not put this out to bid, this is the engineer's estimate, is approximately $75,000 for this project. So here's the picture on the left is the picture of the golf course, and the project is located where the arrow is pointing to, that little white line there. That is the sewer line that's exposed going across Blacktail Creek. The picture on the right actually shows a portion of the sewer line that's encased in concrete, the square that does go across the Blacktail Creek, and that's what inhibits the fish passage at this project. Caleb actually has, and Fish, Wildlife and Parks have actually monitored cutthroat trout positioning itself upstream of this sewer line and not moving downstream, because the flows across that were not enough for it to move over. Once the flows came up after a rainstorm, the fish did move downstream. So the goal is to create a fish passage upstream and downstream, as well as repair the stream banks that you see here and get the vegetation in better condition in the right carrying corridor. The project on the Butte Country Club is the irrigation and diversion project. This is located within the golf course proper. Right now, this is the existing picture of what the irrigation structure looks like at the Butte Country Club for their irrigation system. Blacktail Creek flows from the picture from left to right on this picture. Where it shows on it says in the picture, existing water diversion. This diversion here is much like diversion you would see on many water users, where they have they put planks across the Blacktail Creek to divert water into this irrigation pond. They divert the water into the pond to actually hold enough water there so that they can irrigate the golf course or a portion of the golf course in this area. This is, I would say this is similar to many of the projects that we work on other ranches within the upper ranches and water users within the upper Clark Fork River Basin. As Brian talked about, we do a lot of work on private land. And this is similar to that, where the goal here is to improve the water flow and reduce fish entrainment into that pond. So as far as the diversion goes, what the design shows here, we would like to move the diversion upstream of the pond, put in a fish stream, and then similar to the sewer line, build some step pools using rock weirs, so we have fish passage at the diversion. The fish screen would eliminate fish from getting into the pond, and then we would have a ditch, a pipe system and a ditch to get water to the pond, so that the golf course would still have a pond there to create storage, so that they could irrigate out of that out of the pond, similar to what they do, but it's basically trying to move that diversion off stream. The cost, the engineer's estimate is approximately $200,000 for the diversion structure. The pond itself, so previously it showed the pond was basically connected to Blacktail Creek, and they diverted Blacktail Creek directly into the pond. What the design now does is pulls that pond back from Blacktail Creek. Blacktail Creek would be allowed to function naturally and flow downstream. when the pond is moved back, that floodplain will be regraded to allow, more functioning stream. And, create a more natural, floodplain. It will provide the irrigation water that is necessary for the golf course to irrigate, their property. And an important thing here, it also reduce some fish habitat. The fish habitat within the pond as it currently exists, as it's connected to Blacktail Creek, is good habitat for brook trout. By moving the pond upstream, it reduces that brook trout habitat. The construction cost for this is approximately $470,000. So this is the final design for the irrigation component. As I said, we're moving the pond offstream. Going to reduce fish habitat in the pond by moving the diversion upstream and putting a fish screen on that. It'll also improve the stream function through this area. There's quite a bit of flooding that occurs because of some issues here, and the regrading of the floodplain will help with that. The total cost of both the diversion and the pond structure is approximately $675,000. And once again, this is the engineer's estimate. So where are we with this? So the way we have functioned and the way we implement projects within this restoration plan is the advisory council and the governor have approved a certain amount of money to be allocated to the priority watersheds within the upper Clark Fork River Basin. This Blacktail Creek is a priority watershed, and as I said, it was allocated approximately $950,000 in 2012, and an additional some additional money in 2018 during that revision. So approximately $1.1 million has been allocated to this watershed as recommended by the advisory council and approved by the governor. We have worked on several done a watershed assessment on this watershed and prioritized projects. The highest priority project, as I mentioned, was the red fern diversion that has been completed, and we've completed several other projects in the upper watershed associated with the native trout. This project, the sewer line and the golf course irrigation pond were identified as the next projects or as priority projects as well. At this time, in this watershed, we have $540,000. We have a design for this project. We spent a little less than $300,000 on design and permitting for this project. And I would say that's in the ballpark of what we typically spend on these projects. Might be a little more because of the floodplain permitting here. This is within, I don't know, I believe it's within the city limits, but it does require the FEMA floodplain process that we have to go through. So we have completed what they call the conditional letter of map revision. So we have the floodplain permit for this. The estimated cost for the project is about $750,000. We do know that we have some additional costs and construction management, as well as finalizing the floodplain, it's called the LOMAR, or the letter of map revision for the floodplain permit. And so in total, in number 4 here, we're talking about a project cost of somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000, which we have a shortfall of $360,000 based on the watershed the remaining allocation in the watershed of $540,000. The one question that we have is, where does this additional funding come from? The Aquatic contingency, working with our project partners, working with Trout Unlimited, they've done a very good job of getting funds. So we do need to look out and figure out where we're going to get this additional funding. I would like to talk to the council about the aquatic contingency, because this is, we've had a lot of discussion about this. And in your packet, I believe, Miranda, is at the end of it, or? And so the last page of your packet is table 1.6 out of the restoration plan. And 1.6 actually is a breakdown of all of our allocations. Nick, it's at the very end. It's a foldout. Yeah, that's it. So the top part of it talks about, there's some flow monitoring or the flow at the very top piece of that, graph. The next bigger section is the watershed, where we have allocated, where it shows the allocation to the various watersheds. Blacktail Creek, I believe, is the third line down. And it shows the various allocations, $957,000 in 2012, another $200,000 in 2018, with a current balance of, well, here it shows a current balance of 579, but this is in the restoration plan. Our current balance today is the 540, because we have spent money since we finalized this restoration plan. But the thing I want to point out that's important is toward the bottom of the page is a line item that is called the aquatic contingency. In 2012, and Nick was talking to me earlier about this, he remembers this. In 2012, when this plan was developed, we developed this plan off of conceptual project ideas and conceptual budgets. There was a known that we would not hit all of those project budgets. And if we set up a contingency fund to help make up the difference of some of those unknowns, that's what that contingency is for. And to date, the contingencies have been used sparingly on that page. The yellow marks are the ones that have been where we've used them. I think there's 3 yellow marks with one that's missing, and that's brown sculpture. There's one missing on brown sculpture. It's $9,000. So we've used it approximately 4 times. And it's been used sparingly because it's at the end of the allocation. I'll use the brown sculpture $9,000 as an example. We were coming to the end of that allocation. We were trying to finish up a design, so they needed another $9,000 to finish that design for that project. And then that we stopped. If you remember, 2024, Brown Gulch came in and asked for more funding. We did allocate more funding to Brown Gulch. So we have not used the contingency to implement a new project, but actually to finish a new project at the end of that allocation. As a rule of thumb, right now there is $1.3 million in the contingency. I do not believe, Mike, what's it say we started out with? 1.9. So we started out with $1.9 million. In 2018, we actually took money out of that because we saw that money sitting in the contingency. We allocated about $500,000 out of that to projects to be spent, so that we'd actually spend the money instead of just letting it sit in the contingency. So there is 1.3 in there now. As a rule, and this has been something that's supported by the governor's office, is that we are not looking, the program is not looking to spend more than 10% without getting the governor's office approval to move forward with that type of expenditure. For instance, on the Browns Gulch, that was a very small amount of money relative to the entire watershed allocation. So that was, we felt comfortable doing that. In this case, the $360,000 that we do need for this project to finish it, for the estimated, as I said, we have not taken this out to bid. We do not know the total, but we are also short $360,000. So I personally, as the program lead, am not comfortable putting out something for bid without having enough money to cover the cost for it. So that's why we are here today, to talk to the advisory council about how best to move forward with this. $360,000 is about, is 30% over the Blacktail Creek allocation. well over 10%. So and it's also a large component of the contingency itself, about 27% of the available contingency. The contingency is for the entire upper Clark Fork River Basin, all of the watersheds. So, the one question, that's what we are looking at, is how do we move this project forward? So we do know that we do need to look for additional funding sources. We have had conversations both with, or specifically with the View Country Club, about looking at the design, to do some, revisions to the design to see if we can't save some money there. Looking at matching funds, can we go to, I talked with Trout Unlimited and Casey last week about some of the sources that they've looked at, and they recommended us looking at the 319 funding. There's a lot of funding for 319 grants. We should talk to DNRC about some of the grants that they have, looking to bring other resources to this project. Because we do know that $360,000 will be a big hit on that contingency. So, the program does recommend moving this project forward. It is a priority project within this watershed. But we are seeking council's input on how to use the contingency and, some guidance on path forward there. There's some communications on that. And Jim Ford is here. He's the project manager for NRDP, and Brian's here. Do you guys have anything else to add of what I said?
I would just like to, when you talk about Brown's Gulch as an example, that $9,000 was used to finish construction, not design.
Oh, okay.
And I think that was the same with the other, you said contingency as well.
Yes, okay. Thank you for that clarification. Anything else that?
No, I think that covered about that.
So at that point, yeah, if there are any questions,
But it's Blacktail Creek's a priority 2 stream segment. And how important is that for fish recruitment in the whole upper Clark Fork? I mean, you're talking about moving it off, moving the pond off of the stream, reconnecting the stream so that fish can actually migrate. And that's the major cost, is moving that pond. Right.
Caleb, did I put you on
Yeah.
spot on that, or you don't add the?
Yeah, Caleb Erling. The Blacktail Creek, as far as like a source of recruitment, it doesn't recruit any fish to the upper Clark Fork River itself, obviously, because they can't get there through the Warm Springs ponds, but it is a significant source for Silverbow Creek. So it's probably the main source of brook trout for the upper third or half of Silverbow Creek. And then we have migratory cutthroat, especially from, again, the upper half of Silverbow Creek that are going up through Blacktail Creek, through the golf course, all the way up onto the Forest Service to spawn. So it's pretty critical from a recruitment standpoint. And that's mostly a passage thing, just getting fish both ways through that site.
And this, Doug, I will state that one of the goals of the restoration plan is to restore the fishery of the main stems, both Silverbow Creek and the Park Fork. So Silverbow Creek is a park.
Steve Hill with Anaconda. So does the country club or Silverbow County have any responsibility financially in any of this? Have you considered that?
So we are working with the country club to look for additional funding. We've actually worked with them for quite some time. This is a project that has gone through several iterations of designs, starting back when I was a project manager back in 2014. But because, it has just gone through iterations, Jim picked it up in 2021, 2022 timeframe, and got to a design that we're at today. And as responsibilities, as far as the country club goes with their diversion, they have a water right, and the water right for the diversion at which they have, there today, much like, a farmer or a rancher with a diversion on, Warm Springs Creek or Cottonwood Creek. They have the right for that diversion. So their responsibility there, I would say no. The Butte Silver Bow sewer line is something that we've been working with them on for quite some time. That sewer line's there. It is creating a fish passage. So as far as responsibility, that is something I don't. Caleb, there's no requirement there for them to do anything, right? Yeah.
No, I mean, if they were to change it, if they were to do something on their own to change that, they'd be subject to, current permitting practices, which would require it to be passable. But as far as like just changing what's there, there's no responsibility to do anything with it.
Have they been approached? Participated in this?
So we have approached them, and as I said, this project's been on the books for a while. Originally, when we first approached them, they were gonna actually abandon that line. But since then, development has taken place in the area around there where they're actually gonna leave that line. So, but we do need to, that is one thing that has come forward to us. We do need to approach them and see if we can, get some, as far as this entire project goes, get some match or cooperation from Butte Silver Bow as well as the golf course.
Yeah, they're not. They still have the resource.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Ringstock, I have a question. Has Blacktail Creek ever been adjudicated?
I couldn't tell you, Casey.
I don't think it has.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I don't know for 100% sure.
Who's got the permit for the club to stop the stream? I think there's a question. I remember you go to the Corps of Engineers, you're talking about stopping the stream. You can get the Corps involved. And I cannot see spending money on a private country club when we're as limited as we are. And closed membership. I don't know, what's the cost of membership at the Butte Country Club?
Josh Walton, Butte Country Club, $250 a month.
But there's a joining fee also.
There is not at this time. There has not been one in my time there.
Membership's closed too, though, isn't it?
No, we currently have spots available.
Okay. I think there are several solutions that are much less expensive than doing it this way with the country club. If they want to have this done and done right and put to bed, then their membership could come pony up the difference that we need. Yeah, it's too much of a bite into the contingency plan on what's going forward and everything that's out there. To just build a bigger pond with the country club.
Other members of the council online? Anyone have comments or questions? Conversation? Christie, you can go ahead. Make sure to come off mute, please.
Okay. I have a number of questions that I want us to think about. I think I'll start from the bottom of my list. This council, to my knowledge, doesn't have the documentation, related to the initial allocation. Is that correct?
I don't believe that is in our packet today. Can we confirm that?
The initial allocation, Christie, is in table 6.1.
Okay.
That's on the very last page.
Okay, and was there a specific dollar amount allocated for this project? Or my understanding, there was a specific dollar amount allocated for the watershed?
Oh, yes. Okay, I'm sorry. There is not a specific dollar amount allocated to this project. The specific amount was allocated to the watershed.
Okay, so there has not been an agreement by a predecessor council to fund this project at whatever cost and at whatever time. Is that correct?
Yes and no. No, the previous councils did not, there is not, the previous councils, or excuse me. This council does not necessarily take action on specific projects. It takes action on the allocation to specific watersheds. Once that money, for the restoration plan, once that money is allocated to a watershed, the staff work with our partners and other resource managers to identify the priority projects. And then we work on those priority projects from the highest priority to the lowest priority. So the council does not necessarily have an action on each of those projects, but to where the money is allocated or how much money is allocated to each watershed.
Okay, this is Christy Beal again. So just so that I'm sure that I'm clear and the record is clear, there has not been an agreement by this council or a predecessor of this council to spend a specific amount of money in relation to these two projects that we are together, or three projects we're together referring to as the Country Club project. Is that correct?
This is Doug. Yes, that is correct, Christy.
Okay. And this is, I'm going to continue asking my questions and I just wanted to be sure. One, we want to make sure if we have said we're going to give this money, this amount of money to this entity, we have to stand by that, but we have not said that. Two, I needed to understand if this council or its predecessor has agreed to, at whatever cost and whenever, fund these projects that are being called the Country Club projects, that being the sewer line, the diversion, and the pond. I wanted to be sure we were understanding clearly if our predecessor had already committed us to fully funding those three projects that together are being called the Country Club project. And my understanding is no, not this council nor any predecessor has committed to that. Correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay. Now I want to go to the timing situation. There was a certain amount of money that was allocated for the Blacktail Creek watershed 11 years ago, I understand. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then this particular project got prioritized with others. And then money from that allocation was spent on the higher priority projects initially, and now we're to the prioritization of this project being the next one up. Is that understanding correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay. Why did we need to take 11 years? Because obviously there's nobody on the planet, especially now in today's economy, that doesn't understand that everything is more expensive now than it was 2 years ago or 5 years ago, and certainly 11 years ago. So the time passage is clearly a factor in the amount of money these three projects that are being referred to as the Country Club project are going to cost. Is that fair?
Yes, time has played a factor in the cost of these projects. Yes.
Why has it taken 11 years?
Well, so back when in 2014 and 15, we did a conceptual design looking at how to work on in this stretch of the Blacktail Creek. Part of that project was also going to be integrated with the Parrot project. We did feel that we could get some fill from this project and use it on the project. That did not work out for a number of reasons, but most specifically is the pH of the soil in this area was not suitable for the use that was needed at the Parrot project. So the project there got mothballed for several years. There was some discussion about how to move it forward. And then, when we got, later in the 2018-19 time period, we did start having conversations with the Butte Country Club in Butte Silver Bow again. We went through several iterations of the design to come up to an agreeable design that would meet our goals with the restoration plan, as well as the goals of Butte Silver Bow and the Country Club. So yes, it has taken, because the project we have not worked on the project since 2014. But it has taken 11 years to get to this point.
How much money has already been spent on these 3 projects that are being called the Country Club project?
With the design that's currently out there right now that we have permitted to go out to bid, approximately it's less than $300,000. The conceptual design that we worked back in 2014 on this project was around $40,000, but it also included a much bigger part of Blacktail Creek that actually goes down into the city of Butte, into the Butte Area 1 area, because we were looking at a project there as well. But as far as this specific project, it's just less than $300,000.
Okay, so we've spent approximately $300,000 to get a design so that we could put it out to bid.
Yes.
Has anybody compared that and seen whether or not that's a reasonable cost to spend for just the design, not even to get the project started as far as construction goes?
Yes, I have. I've tracked this. Jim Ford has been working on this. The costs here are, for instance, the costs here are slightly higher than the design that we did on the Anderson stream on Warm Springs Creek. That did not go to construction because the landowner, there was a change in landowners, and the new landowner did not want to work on that project anymore. But the higher costs are mostly associated with the fact that this is located within a managed floodplain, and we had to do the floodplain permitting and the conditional letter of map revision. And the water rights. There's a water rights issue that we had to deal with.
Okay, so the 300,000 isn't just on engineering.
It is not, no.
Okay. Okay, and there is somebody watching to make sure that that amount of expenditure is reasonable and necessary?
Yes, that's the program.
Okay. Who is it that allowed the sewer line to be placed there, and who allowed the pond to be attached to the stream?
I'm sorry, Christy, I don't know about the sewer line. I suspect the sewer line's been there for decades. As far
I
as
know, but somebody had to say, okay, yeah, go ahead, let's put the sewer line across a creek. Who did that? And would they like to participate in the cost of this?
So Jim is letting me know that originally the sewer line was actually below the stream. And since the stream has incised and cut down, it is now, in the stream bed, above the stream bed.
Okay, well, we can't ask Mother Nature to contribute, but perhaps those who allowed the sewer line to be placed there and those who allowed the pond to be attached to the stream could be tapped to join this party. That's one thought I have.
Christie, I gotta cut you off real quick. How old is the sewer line?
Is that Mike?
Yeah, I was just asking how old it is to see if this is like a feasible, like if this is an 80-year-old sewer line.
It is an old sewer line. We ran a camera through it, or Pete Silverbo ran a camera through it for us a couple months ago. So it looks intact, it's encased in cement.
But it's old, I don't know, 40, 50, 60 years old.
Hang on, folks. The last person that was speaking was Mike Paffhausen, or the second to the last person that was speaking for the record was Mike Paffhausen. The person that answered his question was who?
Jim
I'm sorry,
Ford,
Jim Ford.
project
Okay.
manager.
Sorry. Christie.
I have a few more questions when it's appropriate for me to continue.
Go right ahead, Christie.
I want to talk again about the timing situation. This council has already gone through the allocation of money process. There's a process we have in place for people to have to be, you know, to come and ask for additional money or to ask for money for, you know, doesn't necessarily have to be additional money. Why was that process not respected by those asking for this money at this point?
This is Doug, Christie, to answer that question. You are correct. During the revision process that we went back in 2023, this should have been identified and addressed at that point. It was not. I cannot speak to why the Butte Country Club or Butte Silver Bow didn't come in and ask for more money at that point in time. When we did solicit public comment on that, as far as the resource managers and the natural resource damage program, identifying a need here, that I guess I have to admit that would be on us for not identifying that there was a potential need here. And, but at that time, you know, I suspect we had thought there was enough money, but obviously there was not.
Is there something emerging about this project that if they can't wait and do this, ask for money just like everybody else instead of taking it out of the contingency fund?
You know, that's always an option. We could put the project on hold until the next revision, which would be starting 2028. Yes.
Is there any element of these three projects that we are referring to as the Country Club project, any element or any component of them that is time sensitive?
I guess they're all, from one standpoint, no. We don't have to do any of them. I guess they're all time sensitive in the matter of fact that the sooner we restore fish passage, the quicker we reduce the shorter time to recovery there. So.
Doug, with all due respect, every project that comes to us could say it's time sensitive,
Yeah.
and so we don't have to follow and respect the processes. That's every single one. Is there anything specific or different about this one?
No.
I would like to talk. Go ahead.
With your permission, I'd like to direct that question and invite the Butte Country Club to come up and speak as to if there's any urgency or timeline that has been imposed upon the country club as a result of starting this process or getting it to where we're at. So you guys can come up, please, to the podium and.
Well, we've been at it for, this is Christy Beal. We've been at it apparently for 11 years. So I think it'd be awfully hard to say it's an emergency, but I'd love to hear what they say.
My name's Casey Schlepp. I'm the golf course superintendent at the Butte Country Club. Christy, I just want to pose one question just that was brought up here myself to the council, and thank you to the council for giving us the opportunity to be here to speak and address this body as well. But question that I have, or the Butte Country Club has, as far as time sensitivity of this project or proposed projects, is permitting. Permitting was a process that was 4 years in the making up to this point, and is a question that we have posed as well, is what happens to these floodplain revision permits, permit application or change application for water rights and things that we have spent the $300,000 on up to this point. Are we gonna, you know, basically have to go through that process all over again if it doesn't proceed or monies aren't found to proceed with this project? You may not be able to answer that question right now, but that is a question that we have as well. But,
I can answer that real quick. Jim Ford, again, just for everybody's information. So we've looked into our existing permits. There is the point of diversion, the water rights permit change that is extended through the end of this calendar year. So we have to request that again for another extension. If we don't request that extension, it all sort of goes away. You guys go back to where you were with your water right, the basin hasn't been adjudicated. And so that'll come back up when they do the adjudication, but it goes back as before. The other permits, the FEMA, as Doug described, the Clomar and Lomar and stuff, we don't construct the project. There's a process by which we close out that permit also. So just to make sure. But we did, for people's information, I know there's questions about how much money we spent on the engineering. I would say actually really proud. Again, Jim Ford.
Jim Ford still.
Sorry, a little farther back. I would say at least half of that money, maybe the majority of that money was spent on permitting. For those of it, when you reconstruct a creek, which is what we're doing here with this version of the project, that's a very expensive component, getting those permits. And that was the reason why we combined both the sewer line and this portion of the project together, because they had both the same permitting needs, and we were trying to reduce the costs of those permits. So I just want to make sure people are clear on that. So sorry, Casey.
Mike Papphausen, from Butte. Would you clarify if, what permits? We have a floodplain FEMA permit, we've got some water rights, point of diversion permits. Was there 404, 401 with US Army Corps of Engineers?
319, and then there was a permit with DNRC. I don't have the list on the top of my head. I probably should have it ingrained, but I think there were 6 separate permits that we were required to get before going out for bid. Then the contractor, there's a couple additional permits that would be that's expected on the contractor to pull. So it's a fairly sizable lift. The permitting, I would say the permitting for a project like this was more difficult than the actual design.
Mike Papphausen again. Oh, go ahead, Christy.
Christy Beal, the contractor's permits aren't, that's not part of what the money has been spent or a permit that's been obtained, is my understanding, because we don't even have a contractor yet.
That's correct.
And you can request an extension on the permits that you do have?
The primary one that we need to request an extension for is the point of diversion for the water rights. So we're moving, their point of diversion is where they have the batten boards, where they're backing up the creek. So to be clear, they're backing up the creek, it backs up into the creek, into that larger area, which we're calling the pond, but they're all sort of the same area, just backs up. So that is the one we have to have an extension on by the end of the calendar year.
Is there a term on how many extensions can be requested?
There may be, but we haven't found that. We've had one extension already. They're pretty common, these extensions. So I could find out what that is, but I don't know offhand.
I think Christy and Mike Papphausen, again, I think one of the things we want to make sure of is that we don't add cost to permitting the project because of an inability to fund the project currently, if that makes sense. I think that's a whole here, is to not add costs where it doesn't need to be added. So I appreciate your answering that. And then Christy, if I may, I'm going to redirect your question back to the representatives from the Butte Country Club about operational costs. Is there any kind of damages or increased costs that you are going to have as a result of this project not moving forward today or in the future or being delayed until a later date?
Thank you, Mike.
And for the record, this is Casey Schlepp speaking again.
Casey Schlepp, Butte Country Club, speaking once again. Yes, there is, and I will address that question as I kind of go through this, if I'm allowed a little bit extra time to kind of explain kind of my position at the View Country Club. I've been the superintendent at the country club for 19 years now. I was present and through the process of when monies were allocated to the Blacktail Creek from the Clark Fork watershed to basically try to enhance the fish and the whole process or the reason for these projects. And as president, when we started the conceptual design with the River Design Group, going through and identifying different things along the View Country Club property in particular, as far as reasons and places for allocating money that would be the most beneficial to the fish habitat. And for most of you that don't know, the View Country Club, as it exists right now, was a lake in the early 1900s. And the lake was drained and the country club was built. And 2/3 of the stream through the View Country Club property is a man-made creek, which, as we were identifying different issues within our property, there was a lot of issues with the stream inside banks, sedimentation, all of which was causing issues with the trout habitat and the cutthroat habitat. Unfortunately, when got done with the conceptual design at that time, back in 2014-15, there wasn't enough funds to do everything within that project or that plan. And eventually it was identified the sewer line was View Silver Bow, and then irrigation pond being brook trout habitat, and the diversion or dam that we use with our water right for backing up water as being the most prioritized projects within that whole conceptual design and the most cost effective at that time. And that was, 2018 to 2020 when we were first looking at identifying those and started the design process. And that's why we started with these areas. And, it did take some time as far as coming up with a design itself. And the country club project itself fits into all the parameters as far as the reason for the funding behind these projects, as far as fish habitat, passage, riparian habitat, rebuilding of the stream to make it more naturalized versus man-made, the sedimentation, all benefits for the trout habitat. In the course of the design work that has been done, we had to update our water right because the point of diversion was being changed. And in that process of that change of application, we have not been adjudicated yet, but due to this watershed in the process or the starting the preliminary phases of adjudication, we essentially went through those steps that they were going to be, in the process of doing here in the future, and looking at our past water usage and our priority date. And because of having to change our point of diversion, our water right has been changed significantly as far as volume of water. We've lost not lost, but basically our water right has been adjudicated or changed in order because of the size of the pond and evaporation that we got to cut down on the amount of water that we're able to irrigate with in order to compensate for evaporation. Excuse me, I don't talk normally this much in front of people, so
you're doing
anyway, we've made changes to our water rights in order to, and we lost available water to our irrigation of our property due to the adjudication basically of our water rights and evaporation and future design that was anticipated in this. At the same time as designing this, we were in the process of designing a new irrigation system for the View Country Club. We have just in the last year completed that renovation project. But the design of our new irrigation system was all based on construction of this project. So the heart of our irrigation system starts at the source of the water, which is this pond. The only purpose for this pond is irrigation. It isn't for play, it isn't for aesthetics, it is irrigation and irrigation only. So when we went through the design of this irrigation system, pipe sizing, pump size, that was all based on what the available water was going to be from this pond. The inflow rates of the 600 gallons per minute that is our water right, and what the fish screen was gonna, in the passage and diversion was gonna provide for our pond, the recovery over a 24-hour period of us irrigating and recovery of the pond, which would keep consistent flows of water in Blacktail Creek instead of us turning pumps on and pulling water down, which is going to affect health of the creek and trout downstream when we're pulling significant amounts of water off during periods of time irrigating. By not doing this project, it severely impacts our ability to irrigate our property and manage our facility because our whole system is designed around implementation of this. And we've been hoping for the last 3 years that this was going to bid and we're going to proceed with construction. We were under the impression that we were going to be able to do that, put it to bid and go to construction up until a month ago, when we were told that funding was not available. So it does have significant impact on us and our business as far as future and present if we don't proceed with construction. The project has already spent close to $300,000 on this. You know, that's a significant amount of money out of original pot of $900,000 that's already been spent. We're ready to go to bid. We're ready to construct this project as soon as money is available. And that's our plea to this council is, I don't know if there's another project that can be identified that is a bigger priority, better for the fish, that all the work is done. All we have to do is implement, take the next step, go to bid and get it done. We're willing to work with NRD and different groups and as far as the design, wet was left contracting firm and Butte or engineering firm that was helping with get this thing out the door and go to bid. And we still think that it could happen this winter season. And you know, just get the project moving and not waste any more time and any more money. As we all know, and as Christie alluded to, things are costing more and more every year.
Thank you. Any follow-up questions from council? Mick Ringside.
Mick Ringside, I have a question for you. How much is the country club paid in engineering fees?
How much have we paid in engineering fees? We have paid our own engineers in the form of engineering for the irrigation.
For the pond, for this project, as it sits, how much did you pay for the $300,000 engineering fees we're talking about?
We have not paid any engineering.
Thank you.
Steve Hill.
Yeah, Steve Hill from Anaconda. You know, the country club created the problem by putting a pond in along the creek. The county has an obligation to correct their sewer line because of the change in the floodplain condition. I think at least the country club and the county can contribute monetarily to what we're still looking for as far as enough funds to finish this project. And they haven't. We didn't create the problem.
Doug, go ahead.
This is Doug Martin. And Steve, I don't disagree, and I know we've had conversations with the country club, and we need to have conversations with UCFRB about working with them to look at bringing, additional match and additional funding to this project. But I will note that a lot of the projects that we work on with the funding from the Natural Resource Damage Program go to address just these types of problems throughout the basin, with other water users and other issues within the basin that, water users all the time are putting up pin and planks and diverting water, for their irrigation. They've always had that right. It creates a problem for the resource. What we do is we work with those users to mitigate that issue to the resource, for the benefit of the resource. And there is typically a benefit for the user too. So I don't look at this, this project could actually sit on an irrigator's, a different type of irrigated field. And we would be working on it. No different than, I'm trying to think of one of the, I think we took you guys to the Mill Creek diversion. That was diverting the water and creating fish passage and fish entrainment issues. We worked on that. I will say that a lot of those other water users do bring matching funds through different resources, working with Town Unlimited and the Watershed Restoration Coalition and the Carport Coalition, different partners with NRCS grants and that type of thing. And that's part of what we have reached out to the country club and will to the UCFRB to look at some of these other resources to bring other funds toward this. So I just want to clarify, this is different than a lot of our other projects.
And Steve helped me, and I understand that, Doug. I'm not saying that we abandon them and make them pay for all of it, but I think they have a certain contribution they could make to get this project done.
Mick, go ahead.
Mick Rakeside, you again. I have one other consideration. I agree with a lot of what you said, but we have a policy in place that we put in place when we redid the plan in 2012 for the contingencies, and there's a reason they're there. And as part of that policy, our policy has been never to spend more than 10% of what is remaining in the contingency fund. And that's been agreed to by the trustee in the governor's office. And to fund this project, we've got to blow that all apart and go 30-40% of contingency that's left in there to do this one project. And we set a precedent for the entire basin of contingency fees in the other areas, so that everybody out there on the project that isn't quite done can come to us and say, take your contingency money and get it to us. I think the biggest issue here is we do not want to set that priority. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick. So Mike Pathausen, so a couple things. First is just normal thanks are in order for landowner cooperation and the desire to participate in projects. That's always a requirement on every project. And we understand that you guys have been dutiful alongside NRD and the other parties that be in your consultants to continue to explore the project. I think one of the things that we need to be discussing is, are we looking at a unprecedented, in my opinion, based on the math that's been provided, in historic contingency request, because we've never had a request to release this much of a contingency ever, okay, in the history of the fund, in my opinion, and based on the math that's provided to the council? Or is this more appropriate to be a reallocation request towards Blacktail Creek? And that's a conversation we need to be having as a council as to what is this? I think right now it's being presented as a contingency. But is it more suitable considering it's how far it was away from looking like any of the other contingency usages? Is it more like a reallocation request or reallocation amendment request? So I think we need to discuss that.
Like Chrissy online has her hand raised again.
Christie, go ahead.
This is Christy Beal. Again, I would like to just echo what Mike and Mick have both just commented on in relation to the amount of the money requested in relation to what has historically been done. I would also add to that, that as a construction lawyer, I would be really hard pressed to suggest my clients get into a project where from the get-go and before the get-go, they are into contingency. This isn't how contingencies are spent on projects. This is, we got everything all backwards here. We got things backwards here, and for a number of reasons things are backwards. So I wanted to echo what Mick and Mike said about the extent of the money being requested. I wanted to re-echo what I said earlier about the timing of this request. And wanted to follow up on a question that Steve had about how much Butte Silverborg or the country club has spent. He asked how much they'd spent on engineers. My question is, how much has Butte Silverborg or the country club spent on these permits? I'm guessing none, but I'll let somebody hopefully answer that.
I'll let Doug take the floor for a second, Christie, to attempt to answer. We don't have a representative of Butte Silverborg in the room, so.
Chrissy, this is Doug Martin. The natural resource, the restoration fund, put in for the permits and paid for the permits. So we would be the owner of the project, when it went out for construction.
This is Christy Beal, understood. The comments in relation to the benefits to the country club in relation to its irrigation process. It sounds to me like the country club will experience some significant benefit from at least the pond part of the project. And that is another reason that I believe that the country club and its members ought to participate in the cost of this project.
Christie, if I may, can I divert that to comment to the representatives from the country club in regards to?
Casey Schlapp, View Country Club, you know, superintendent is my title, the country club, and also we have Jeff Briney, general manager, and Josh Ball, assistant general manager, head golf professional here for this meeting. From my position as superintendent, we're not trying to get something for nothing with this, or try to enhance our property or get something off of the public dollar that is going to make our property better. The whole start to this process 14 years ago was, how can we make things better for the fish that were in the stream, and how to make things, you know, better from an environmental stewardship of the property that we have, that we're tasked with maintaining. Yes, we do make a living off of that property, or I do personally, with the job that I do. But the whole purpose of this was for the fish, and cleaning up some things that were done 80 years ago, when they drained the man-made lake and built a golf course that is going to be better for the fish and the whole reason for this, body to be here, it is something that was a benefit for everybody. And the fact that it just happened to be at the same time that we were redoing our irrigation system, and the design, and we were hoping construction would happen all at the same time so that it would be to the benefit of both parties. That was the whole purpose of these projects. And from my standpoint as superintendent, I'll pass the floor to the general manager.
Jeff Roney, general manager of the club. Yeah, I mean, the whole, kind of when we were approached, I started in 15, so I wasn't part of the entire project. You know, I think that there was some negotiation as far as what we were gonna do and what NRD was gonna do on the initial, you know, as far as basically getting the dirt for the project. That went away. You know, I don't know how things would have changed as far as the project if we were approached for some, you know, helping out like monetarily or not. You know, like Casey just said, that we had, you know, a huge irrigation project that we're, you know, it's the biggest undertaking that Butte Country Club has had since its inception, really. Right, so it's a huge financial burden on us, you know, now. You know, so I don't know as far as, you know, board of directors, what we can do, you know, as far as grants, hopefully we can help out in those regards, but, you know, one question I have, how often does the landowner help out with, like, monetarily on these projects? Is it 80%? You know, I don't know. I guess I'm new to this, so I don't.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, this is Doug Martin with the Natural Resource Damage Program. It is that a large majority of the projects get to have cash match, or some sort of match. I don't know, Casey, if you were gonna raise your hand or not, but, you look like you were gonna say something. But, on a majority of the projects, there is some cash match. It may not be, 50%. It may be 20%, you know, maybe, the landowner entering into an equip project with, the NRCS, a federal contract to get some match there, but, most projects, especially now, have a match. I would say maybe at the beginning of the program and the beginning of the implementation of this, it was less so, but as we have moved forward, more and more matches been available and more people are comfortable with that.
So I guess how do you quantify what the country club would be, you know, viable, not viable, but how much we would be putting in?
Responsible for?
Yeah.
So this is Doug Martin again. What we would, at least from our discussions that we've had within the program, part of what we wanted to have this discussion with the council, is so that we could make a recommendation to the governor's office. But is to, you know, work with the country club and UCFRB to seek some kind of match. We know there are matching funds out there. As I provided the 319 funding to you, some information on that, you know, putting in for that, trying to, come up with something. You know, I did have a slide up here. You know, 10% of the watershed allocation is about approximately $115,000. You know, that would not cover it. But, you know, the way we have addressed the aquatics projects in the 24 revision is that all aquatics and terrestrial projects need to seek match. And, you know, Jeff, I can't put a dollar figure on it, I just don't know. I mean, one of the things that we don't want to do, Brian and I talked about this, is we could say, oh, well, we'll say 15% of the contingency could be used. But what happens, the 15% of the contingency would be $180,000, but what happens if we're $5,000 short? we're coming back for another revision or another recommendation to get, $5,000. So,
Sure.
It's our recommendation that, we look for as much match as we can get. If we are still, greater than, that 10 or 15%, maybe we have to revisit this, but I think, if we do look at some valued engineering on the design, look at, working with yourself and Beat Silver Glow and other partners about trying to get as much match as possible. Who knows? I know Trout Unlimited has brought to the Warm Springs Creek projects 50% matching funds. We might be able to do that, and then we're not going into the contingency at all.
Sure.
So I guess that's what the program's recommendation is let's go out there and look for as much match as we can get, and bring it toward the project.
Thanks, Doug. Mike Paffhausen, just a couple comments. Just to clarify, matching funds does not mean a check that says Butte Country Club on it. It just means a check that doesn't say NRDP on it, right? So that's first thing, is just understanding that your ability to obtain using partnerships funds is something that is common and normal. And I'd say that's often how matches occur, right? It's not like a rancher or farmer is cutting a check, because most of them just wouldn't do it, right? So, second thing is, I would like to point out to you the value of your dirt. You will be able to sell that dirt to a buyer, and likely that will create monetary gain. So,
Sure.
Yeah, go right ahead.
Casey Schlepp, Butte Country Club. As far as something along with this process was, we had to secure access easement through a neighbor's property. And in order to procure that access easement for this project, the dirt was going to be given to that property owner in exchange for the easement. And in terms of time sensitiveness, the time sensitive nature of that easement is they're in the process of subdividing that piece of property. And if we wait too terribly long, a year potentially, in moving forward with this project, easements or access to implement this project at all might go away. So yes, that was a value. NRD was using that money or that value of that dirt to secure an access, which also brought the cost of the project down without having to remove the dirt to repository or wherever else the dirt to be disposed of. It was to our neighbor, cutting down on construction costs, and was a win-win for everybody.
Thank you. Just to follow up, is that neighbor a private citizen or municipality? Can we just be clear on that?
Casey Schlepp, private citizen.
Private citizen, thank you. You mentioned as well, Mike Paffhausen again, that you guys redesigned at your expense the irrigation system, which I have seen. It's a pretty significant project. That was done at your sole expense, correct?
That's correct.
And then could you please describe how that system, you mentioned that it was designed to be integrated with this completed pond, and that's how it was designed to work, right? Could you just describe to me, is it gonna fail to operate as with the same efficacy if you are forced to continue to use the historic method of backing up water for a short time period, or will there be a decrease in efficacy because the design is not working correctly, if you can?
So Casey Schlepp, Butte Country Club. Right now, the way that it's set up with the dam on the creek, backflowing water into our irrigation pond, the point of diversion essentially is the pump itself. So to pump at our water rights is 600 gallons per minute. With the design of the project from NRD, and taking the stream or the pond off the stream and just having a diverting that 600 gallons per minute water rate, we were able to, keep that consistent draw off of the creek. And we sized our pumps to where we were, trying to irrigate our golf course in an 8-hour window. So basically for an 8-hour period of time, running for 1,200 gallons per minute, for example. Well, that's above our water rate and more of a draw off of the stream, if we were to turn our pumps on to that capacity. And with basically all the water be coming to our irrigation pond versus going downstream. And even in the point in time where, it's greater than 3 CFS or whatever that volume calculation may be. So it will work, if I pump it, if the Butte Country Club pumps water at a greater rate. But what it's doing is it's taking water away from the stream.
Okay, and then following up on a question, this is Mike Backhouse again. Obviously the infrastructure project that you guys have done has greatly increased your irrigation system's capability and efficacy, right? It's working better because of all the money that you guys spent on it. When this project is complete, will your system be worse off, the same, or better off? Just so that we can put that on a headline if it's required to be.
The whole reason for us to redo our irrigation system was to be more efficient in our use of water. Through the sprinkler system or the sprinklers themselves being able to have a uniform distribution of water, so that we're using less water to have a better product. So implementation of this project by the NRD, it will, I shouldn't say it would make our irrigation system or golf course any better. It will make the stream better, and it'll make the fish, the health of the fish within the stream better.
So fair to say it's neutral to you, you'll have the same system, but in better for the ecosystem. Is that what I gathered?
Yes.
Okay.
Could I just add one thing, Jock Walsh, Butte Country Club? I just hate for us to show up here, seeming entitled or anything of that nature. All of the matching talk and the fundraising, that has come in the last 3 weeks. This has been 11 years, where we've been helping and hand in hand, explaining what's going to happen to our 450 members. Nowhere along the line was it suggested that we match any money, that we fundraise. We were under the understanding this was going to go to bid this fall. It was actually re-engineered this spring for the second or third time, right? So I guess it's just to get to this point and find out we've gotten this far, and this is where we find out we've got you here, and now we need money from you. It's a tough thing last minute, because I feel like we're coming in here going, hey, get this done for us, right? We haven't done anything, right? We didn't know we were supposed to do anything. Does that make sense? I just kind of want to, get that point across that, at the 11th hour, it's, where's all your money you have? When we've been talking about this for 11 years, and that's never been discussed. So appreciate you having us here, and great process. Thank you.
Okay.
Valerie, go ahead, please.
Valerie Firth with DNRC. I had questions about irrigation efficiency, but I think you covered them. Thank you. But I was wondering, since golf courses are pretty notorious for using a lot of fertilizer, will this project and the floodplain reconstruction, as I understand it, will that provide more of a filter towards the creek or any potential possible runoff?
Casey Schlepp, Butte Country Club. Part of the design was taking stormwater drain from Butte Silver Bow and across this facility and diverting that water into the irrigation pond instead of going directly into Blacktail Creek in order to take potential contaminants and not, keep it away from the creek and put it into our pond versus the way it is now going straight into Blacktail Creek. And then also we have with the riparian areas and buffer strips that we have throughout the property to cut down potential nitrate loading of the stream. And then through proper calibration of equipment and product that we use to prevent nitrate loading in the stream during potential runoff periods or times that might have an effect as far as getting into the stream.
What other questions or comments do we have from council? Christie, would you go ahead and make sure to unmute yourself, please?
Yes, but okay, yes, I'm sorry, I was gonna say Mr. Harris was before me, but you're going with council right now?
Correct, yeah, you can go ahead.
Okay, first I wanted to say, for the benefit of those from the country club who are here, I do understand your frustration in not having learned about the matching issue previously. Those people who have come to this council since I have been on the council have been made aware through the process that everybody else went through, that that's one of the requirements we have. And because you haven't had the benefit of learning about the matching, because you haven't gone through the process everybody else has, I want to take a minute to explain that. This council is responsible for protecting this money and spending it wisely. It's not a never-ending fund. It isn't. And there's going to be somebody in 11 years from now who's going to look at this very council, these volunteers that are here today, and say, why did you allow $350,000 to be spent on a contingency for a project no one ever promised was going to be fully funded? And you dip into the contingency to that extent, something that has, one, never been done before to this extent, two, isn't following the timing process that has been set in place, and three, you don't require them to bring matching. Those would be some really hard questions for us to answer. And you did it to the benefit of the country club. Those are things that we all have to answer. We're not here being difficult because we have nothing else to do. We all have stuff we have to do, but we're charged with protecting this fund and being reasonable in how we allocate it and being fair in how and when we allocate it. And there's just so many things about this request that are outside the norm. The timing, the amount, the no matching funds. I know you've said that there's going to be zero benefit to the country club, but I would ask if you would be willing to go under oath and put that under oath. If this council, this volunteer council, is attacked for benefiting a private country club who comes asking for money outside of the time frame, outside of the normal use of the contingency. The contingency is supposed to be for wrapping up projects at the end. If we run out of money at the end, we're not anywhere close to the end. And I don't pretend as I sit here today to understand the whole history. I do understand your frustration. Projects shouldn't take 11 years. But we are where we are, and there wasn't money, there wasn't a set dollar figure that was promised for this project, and there was no promise that this project was going to be funded. There was a certain amount of money allocated for the watershed that was applied to projects on a prioritized process, and there simply isn't enough money left to fund this project right now. And so we're being asked, well, can we just get $350,000 out of the contingency fund? What would you say if we ended up in a battle because we said yes to this? What would you say if somebody said, really, there was really no benefit to this private country club?
Casey Schwab View Country Club. We're just the civil servants of our membership, basically, as well, that, you know, I understand budgets, I understand, volunteers and, the capacities that, you are in this room, and I really didn't know that, this was gonna turn into, basically, it feels to me like, I'm not a salesman. My job is to maintenance of the golf course. And it feels, as though we're kind of here begging for funding to finish this project. And to some degree that we are. But I do understand, fiscal responsibility, and, the question can also be posed is, spent $300,000 on design, permitting, and now we're just gonna walk away from it. That's not fiscally responsible to any group or body of people either. You know, so I know there's gonna be give and take, and, from everybody involved in here, and trust me, it's not a personal thing or, towards anything, us, towards you, or you towards us. We're just trying to figure out a way to get these projects done that, you know, it helps this body of people and it helps us, as far as, us being, me do my job, not a benefit to the member of the country club.
Thank you. Christie, any further comment?
I just have to take exception to the civil servant part. An employee of a private country club is not a civil servant, sir. A civil servant is somebody who's serving in a different capacity. And nobody is here asking you to sell it. We just have to defend what we allocate. Every single entity, every single project manager, every single person that comes before this council has to help us understand why this is the best use of the money. If it feels like a sales job, I understand that. I do. It's not, it's just that we have to be convinced that we're doing the right thing with the charge that we have with spending this money carefully and wisely, because once it's gone, it's gone.
Thanks, Christie. Mike Paphausen again. I think one thing to be clear is I don't think there's conversation in this council that we are disinterested in this project. I think that would be short-sighted by everybody after we have 300,000 of work in progress. But the economic realities are what this council is charged to figure out, right? We've got $540,000 available for Blacktail Creek, and we have a $900,000 project in front of us, right? This council can't just snap a finger and change that. That's the allocation. And speaking, you know, honestly, if this was a project that was brought forward to us in the fall, we probably would have been able to make changes during the allocation. I can't say what those would have looked like, but based on how those went, there probably would have been a match back in the fall, even if this was brought forward to council, because it was a proposed project. It wasn't an ongoing project. Ongoing projects are not imposed matches that didn't have a historic agreement. But on proposed projects, which this one was, and when I say ongoing, I mean like the shovels in the ground, probably would have still required a match, since money had to be robbed from Peter to pay Paul, right? Because when we are doing those allocations, we were taking money from, and last year you saw 600,000 came out of the reserve fund and redeployed to projects, right? And we easily could have moved that into Blacktail with a good request at that time. And I would ask for your guys' understanding of the difficulty for us to also set a precedent that has never been set, as making a an amendment change to an allocation or a historic contingency. But with that said, I do feel that NRDP and all the vested parties have an interest to see this move forward. And I do feel that our team at NRDP would probably help in great measure to find match funding as well. Obviously that not at a cost to us, but by being resourceful and helping to find how do we make this work for the rancher and why can't we find that same way to make it work for the country club? And I do know that those buckets exist. So that's where I think we're going to be going on this, is that match funds are probably still going to be required because everyone else has been required that didn't have a project that was shovel ready in the ground last year. And the realities of it being, that meeting was a year ago and it was a 7-hour meeting, just in case anyone wasn't there. It was long. This one is paling to be only 3 hours. So let's double it in that another hour, right? It was a long one. But Mick, go ahead.
Mick Ringside, just, first of all, I appreciate you guys coming, standing up in front of us and explaining what you're doing. And I think that's great. I did not know this project in depth, and I'm the oldest member on the board since 2010. This is the first time I heard about projects beyond watershed. So that money that is there, that we have, that we can commit, is staying there. It's not going to disappear tomorrow. As a group, working together for the benefit of the stream, the community, and everybody, we have to find a way to fill that gap. Because we can't take money out of contingency fund to fill that gap. So.
Mike.
I just want you to know, we're not abandoning it. It's a good project, not abandoning it. You just have to all get together and find a way to do it. And some way is to find a match for that spread that we don't have.
Thank you, Mick. Marty, go ahead.
Margie Christensen. That's what I was gonna say. How long did we know that we were gonna have this request? Because I didn't. And I don't think we should change our policy of 10% for this, for anything. Because once we change it, we set a precedence and we don't want to do that. But I do think we should have had time to tell you about the matching funds, that you could have tried to get some, and maybe we could have helped get some. I guess I think we'd like to help you, but I don't think we should change our policy.
Thank you. Any other comment or online from the council?
Mr. Sesso is online. He was hoping to get through if he's still on there.
Yes, please. We do have, before Mr. Sesso jumps on, we'll switch over to Doug Martin, please.
So this is Doug Martin. I guess, listening to the conversation that, from the program's perspective, we do appreciate the council's input and Casey and Jeff and your input on this. What I would recommend, that we do to move this forward. I do think it's important that we move the project forward. With other things, we need to learn our lessons and move forward. But I guess what I would make a commitment to from the program is that we would work with the country club and Butte Silver Boat and go out and seek as much match as we can. And then return to the council with the results of that and see where we are and, see what the council thinks about that. But as I said, I do think there's match out there that we can get. And I would like to, have that opportunity for us to work with these folks to resolve this issue and move it forward. So I guess that's, I don't think, a recommendation of the council at this point, may be necessary. But maybe if we can have some time to work forward and put in for some grants and seek some other funding, either through efficiencies and other things that we can come back with a resolution to this to the council. That would be my thought.
And I would entertain a motion as such if it was brought forward by a member of the council. Yes, actually, that's a great omission to point out of mine. Public comment for people outside the council, and I believe we had in line Mr. Sesso that is prepared to speak. Is that correct?
Michael Harris was on there, have his hand. I don't know if Sessa's not showing up here, I guess.
Not showing up. Okay.
Yeah, Mike Harris was on previous.
Mike Harris, would you be able to come off of mute and provide public comment, please?
I just had a couple of questions as you're going through this on the matching requirement. What is considered match? Because I understood that in-kind was also part of it.
This is Doug Martin, Mike. Yes, matching funds, does include in-kind service, which, you know, the partners could provide as well as cash match. Yes.
And on the sewer line that needs to be fixed going across the creek, is that a sewer main for the city, or is that going to the country club for service?
This is Doug Martin again. This is a sewer line, a city sewer line that crosses the stream. It does not go to the golf course. It goes from one side to the other.
Okay. And then on the golf course itself, is the golf course open to the general public?
I'll direct that to the golf course.
Josh Walsh, Butte Country Club. We are open to the general public any day after noon. Yes.
Okay. And you mentioned that there's this was part of a stormwater project as well?
Can you repeat your question again, please?
There was mention that the pond was actually part of a stormwater collection system?
I'll defer back. I don't think the pond is for stormwater, but there's elements of the design that address stormwater.
Okay.
That's what I understood, but I'll let you guys speak to that. please.
Casey Schwab, Butte Country Club Superintendent. There's a stormwater drain that, most stormwater drains, around the property around the Butte Country Club, daylights onto the property itself. Is a buffer or filter to, capture any contaminants or sediment, before it, gets to the stream, Blacktail Creek. In this particular, stretch next to the pond, there's one that, that water, is able to reach the stream, but without, being, you know, the sediment or contaminants, be, filtered out. So that was gonna go, directly into the pond, versus being able to reach the stream directly.
And that stormwater runoff, is that only from the golf course, or is that from neighboring properties?
That's from Butte Silver Bow stormwater collection system within the municipality of Butte.
Okay, so this is a fairly elaborate project.
Casey Schlepp again, yes, I would say so.
Okay.
And the only reason I'm able to answer those questions versus maybe Jim Ford here with the NRDP is I was very in depth with the design process over the course of 4 years, working with Respect, the engineering firm at that time, and then most recently WET, and trying to have a design that was going to function for this project.
Thank you.
Any other public comment or comment of the council?
John is online.
Yeah, Sessa's online, but he's on a phone, so, can't raise his hand. I don't know if this.
Yeah, he said he's unmuted.
Okay, John Sesso, if you can hear us, please unmute yourself and you should be able to talk over the microphone.
Can you hear me?
I can now.
Hello? Okay.
Go right ahead, John.
I want to clarify two things. One, this project has been an NRD lead project from the start. And when it was ready to go to bid last fall, the NRD program decided to wait and re-engineer it a little more to make it better. And at no time in the last 3 construction seasons were we in a position, I speak as a member of the board of the country club, to control or figure out where the finances were. I know we asked many times to make sure that there was sufficient funding, because we asked and we were told yes each time. And so when the project was delayed last winter or last fall, we weren't asked to come to the restoration plan, the aquatic terrestrial restoration plan redo, and allocate more money for Blacktail Creek. We sure would have if that was something we should have done. So whether it was a reallocation of or an added allocation to Blacktail Creek or the use of the contingency fund, we have been basically following the lead of the NRD staff telling us what the options were. So we had no sense that money was an issue, and so we were not remiss in not asking for more money. Now, changing hats for a second, and just speaking as a citizen of Butte and an observer of the NRD process for many years, the fact that there seems to be some cap on the amount of money that we expect and intend to spend on Blacktail Creek in general is troubling to me. That the original allocation of 2012 of the $1 million is all that can be expected to be spent on Blacktail Creek generally is troubling. I mean, this is a priority tributary to the Clark Fork River. We at some point have to expect that we would spend more on Blacktail Creek. And then third point I'd make is we got a good project ready to go. The fact that it's taken so long, a lot of reasons, a lot of discussion on why it's taken so long. I get all that. But the fact is, it's taken a lot longer than it should have. And the fact is now it's costing more than it should have. But we've spent a lot of money getting this project ready to go. And it seems odd, or I don't know what the word is, but it seems a little bit irresponsible to solve the problem by delaying the project further, which is going to cost more money to re-up all the permits, to wait another year, to inflation relative to construction costs, and burdening the program and matching funds with filling an additional gap. It would seem to me, and I would urge you, let's get this project in the ground now, and contingency funds or a reallocation. Let's say the next time we're allowed to add more money for Blacktail Creek in the overall plan, if that money has to be added to the Blacktail Creek and then given back to the contingency fund, so be it. But projects are hard to get to this point, because this has been NRD doing a lot of assessment on whether this project had value to the resource, the fish and the riparian area. The answer is an unquestioned yes. Let's do it. Let's get projects done. And I think that is as important as breaking precedent with the contingency fund, adding more dollars into the Blacktail Creek fund so we can fund this. I fear the worst, that despite any best effort that will be made over the next year, that it won't get done. And we're going to not only lose the $300,000 investment, which, by the way, excludes NRD staff costs, excludes Butte Country Club costs, and everybody else's costs that has been spent on trying to get this project ready for construction. That investment will be lost, and that is much more of a problem, I would say, than breaking precedent, getting this project in the ground, and truly affecting the value of these natural resources in a positive way. So I would urge you to go forward. You can do it, and let's get the project done. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Any other members of the public or council?
Mike, I've got a commitment in Anaconda.
Steve Hill and Anaconda is going to bow out for the 7-hour meeting. Thank you, Steve.
Christy has her hand raised somewhere.
Who does?
Christy.
Christy? Yeah. Christy, go right ahead, please.
I just wanted to address the last person that spoke. I understand your passion, and I want you to know you are not alone. There are so many people that come before us through our usual process and go through the months and months and months of the process. And many of them are just as or more passionate about what they are supporting. It's not that we don't support your project. It's not that we don't have an interest in getting things done. It's just a matter of there's a limited amount in the fund. And I do believe there's a very significant difference. I don't think we can rob out of the contingency plan and just get it refilled later. That creates a whole additional layer of precedent that I do not want to see this council do when I'm co-chairing it. That creates a whole different situation. And I just want the folks at the country club to realize this isn't something that people are opposed to it. We are being asked to step way outside of what has ever been done with this contingency fund and treat it very differently. And at the same time, you're asking us to do that on a project that was never actually funded. There was no commitment to fund this project before. There was a commitment for certain dollar figures to go to that watershed, but there was no commitment to fund this specific project for an unknown amount of money at some unknown time. And so asking us to do that because the deadline for getting it funded during the usual route has passed, asking us to go outside of what is usual really puts a lot of exposure on a volunteer council. And it runs contrary to what we're being asked and been charged with doing. But none of that is a reflection on whether or not we believe in your project. I get that you want it. I get that it's important. I get that there's going to be a benefit to the natural resource. Every single person, every single entity that comes before us has those concerns, and some of them share or surpass your passion. It's just that we're expected to stand up here and hear all this and then make wise decisions that we can defend. That's where the rub is. It's not that we don't believe in your project or don't think it would benefit the natural resources. So I just wanted a chance to explain that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
I'm Casey Hackenover, Trout Unlimited. I was involved in the original assessment on Blacktail Creek that resulted in some of those priorities you saw. And it doesn't sound like everybody's in concurrence. It's a good project, and we agree. Getting that getting Blacktail Creek connected as another spawning tributary, that system's important. So this project has high value. And I agree with Mr. Sesso that it's no fault of the project proponents that they didn't bring this concern forward last year. They frankly didn't know what the construction costs were gonna be. I just want to highlight to the council that, going forward, this is likely to be an issue you're gonna have to deal with more as construction costs go up and, the funds get spent down in each of these watersheds. And the projects that Brian talked about earlier on Warm Springs, we'd be having the same conversation about those now if we didn't have the federal dollars that came in to that system, because the construction costs were twice what they were imagined. These two projects were included in have been included in the restoration plan since the original plan, actually. And we, as a project proponent at the time, the original plans put forward $300,000 cost to reconnect all the projects through there. Obviously, that's way out of the window now, so it's just to show that over time, construction costs have gone up considerably. And I understand the optics of working with a golf course versus a rancher or an industrial water utility, but the reality is the fish don't really care who owns it. And we're working with private business interests, whether it's a ranch, whether it's Beat Silverbo's industrial utility, they're all business interests. So I don't feel like that should color the decision.
Any other members of the council have comment? Or members of the public? Either present or online?
Not seeing any online.
Okay. So we're at the phase where we have to decide as a council what's next. Of course, motions can always be heard and accepted, voted upon. However, I feel that it's for the betterment of the fund. This is the not so fun part of managing a depleting fund, is trying to make it last and live a long time. It's kind of like when that dog is in its last 2 years of its life and you take it to bed every other day. Not the best time. But that's what we're tasked with and we need to make the best of it. I feel we'd be unbelievably short-sighted to not explore what grant options are available and have that reported back to this council. Because that is a great way to make 360 not be 360. And for the timeline as such, I don't believe this needs to be called to a vote, or there could be a consensus. But for the timeline, I don't know what you would deem or what would be deemed to be fair and reasonable, considering the construction timeline and costs and bids and everything. So.
Yeah, this is Doug Martin. I do not think that the country club would like us, and others have talked about trying to get up to bid this fall. I just don't see that where we are right now in the financial picture of getting out. I will make a commitment that the program will work with the Butte Silverbow and the country club membership to seek matching funds, and report back to this council.
By when?
I'm going to say next spring. We do need to get a design out and on the street and put that out for bid. So we do need to, dig up those funds as soon as possible and find out where we are. So I would say we would report back to you next spring, with the results of our work with our partners on this project, and let you know where we stand and how in a path, and provide you with a path forward.
I think that's fair, and a path forward is wanted by everybody in the room, but I would open up that for discussion amongst the council or public comment as well. Nick Ringsack from you.
Nick Ringsack, dude. First of all, Mr. Chairman, thank you for keeping this all in order and good. And I think the best thing we can do is take where we are and go forward with it. No motions, no anything else is necessary. The commitment of the council and the NRDP is here. And so if anything, make a motion that this council will commit to continuing to find the funds to complete the project. So moved.
Okay, so moved. Second.
I second.
Margie seconds. All those in favor?
Alright,
Aye.
we need the people online to vote too for the forum.
Okay, and that'd be Christie online and
Christie and Chris.
Christie and Chris online. There was a motion that we proceed forward and try to find a way to make the project financially feasible. By Brink Sapp, it was seconded by Marjorie Christensen. We have put it forward for a vote of aye or nay. What is your vote?
Just to be clear, that the motion was for the council to find a way, is that what it is?
No, to NRDP to work with the partners that be to find.
Attempt to find a way.
Attempt to find the match funds.
Aye.
With the timeline being next spring, as Doug mentioned?
With the timeline being report back to this council by spring of 2025.
I confirm aye.
Aye.
That's all ayes. Any opposed? Okay, so hearing none, that's motion carries.
Public comment on motion.
Oh, I do need public comment on a motion, so I'm gonna delete what I just said. Public comment on the motion. Anyone online, please come off mute or you're talking to no one. Okay,
You waiting for my
I'm
public
hearing no
comment?
public. Who is that?
This is John.
Is that Mr. Sesso?
Yes,
Go right ahead, John.
we already took the vote on the motion and we're commenting on the motion?
No, sir, we took a vote prematurely on the motion and now we're entertaining comments because of an inadequate chair that you're talking to right now.
Well, my comment is that why wouldn't you entertain at least some portion of the contingency money to kickstart the matching fund process and finding these additional funds? You have some contingency funds, committing some of those contingency funds up to your limit, whatever that might be, the 10% limit. I didn't quite grasp what exactly is your constraint on the contingency fund use, but it would be very much appreciated as if the council were to agree that at least some part of this gap in funding could come from the contingency funding that's available. I remind you again that when this project got started, there was not this this requirement, I guess a better way to say it, for matching funds. And I also remind the council that it has been an NRDP lead, that you keep speaking about it as the country club's project, when in fact it has been completely controlled by the NRDP. So I would just ask you to consider at least kickstarting the amount that's going to be needed for getting the project done. Some of it could come out of the contingency fund, and I would ask you to consider that. Thank you.
Mick, could you clarify in your motion if you feel that
No,
that would be a component of your motion?
Comments, I'll restate my motion.
Okay,
I'm sticking the original motion as written, and when they do what we do, is try to put it all together, that's the time to include the contingency funds, the amount of money we're gonna get to be able to do the job. Not now.
okay.
I'm the only member of this council who was here when all of this stuff went on back in 2010, 2012, 2016, 2018. This council, seriously, other than myself, has not been privy to any of that occurred.
So your motion that
Restate my motion.
We'll restate your motion. Should we, considering the comment, revote? Fairness?
We should go.
Okay, so your motion has been restated as original. That please say it one more time concisely so that it's.
That this council and the NRDP will assist and work with the parties involved to raise sufficient funds to get this project completed, and they will report back to us as a council by 2025. Springs 2020.
Okay,
She has her hand raised online. I don't know if it's. I'm assuming this is discussed motion.
yeah, we'll open up, before we do any vote, we'll open it up for discussion. So go ahead, Christie.
I was trying to bring my hand down because I was just gonna call for the vote because I understand what the desire is, but there's a motion pending. And I was gonna call for the vote.
Okay, so we have a motion. Would you like to second again, Marjorie?
Yes.
Okay, Marjorie seconds. We need to do public comment one more time on this new motion.
It's not a new motion.
No.
This is Christie Beal.
Okay. Yeah, it's a repeated motion, but with the comment, we're going to revote for the sake of prudency. All those in favor, please motion by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Online,
Christie Beal, aye.
I still have to ask for clarification. I'm sorry, there was a conversation about committing 10%, and I believe that is not part of the motion. Is that correct?
Who's speaking?
This is Chris Starks. I'm sorry.
Chris, I will defer to the motion.
That is, the original motion stands as is, but no, it's not part of the motion.
I confirm aye.
Confirm aye. Any opposed? Okay, so hearing none.
No.
Motion carries. Yeah. Let's see.
So quickly.
Yeah.
So this is Doug Martin. I am gonna quickly go through the Parrot tailings waste removal reimbursement process. If you remember during the 2023 revision, when we went through it, we talked about there would be money coming back from the Parrot project. I'm not gonna go through this slide in detail, but that big green dot is where the Parrot fund currently exists. We know there is money coming back as a conclusion of the project. At this point in time, we feel we have met our obligations to the deep priority soils consent decree, and we can allocate money out of this per the 2019 plan amendments that were approved by the governor, recommended by this council and approved by the governor. Per that plan revision, so money left over in the Parrot needs to be reimbursed to the funds that contributed to the Parrot fund. At this point in time, there's approximately $2.8 million that is remaining in the Parrot fund. We do believe we need to retain about $500,000 for operation and maintenance of the Parrot project, as well as some monitoring requirements that we have within the Butte consent decree. That would leave approximately $2.4 million to reimburse. The upper Clarkport River Basin gets reimbursed into two pots. The one pot that's listed here in the third bullet, 14% comes back to the Butte Groundwater Fund. Butte Groundwater contributed money to this from their unspent or unallocated interest. So at this time, they would get approximately $330. And I say approximately because when we do this reimbursement at that exact date, we will not have exactly that amount of money that's shown on the slide. It will be slightly different, but this is what we are approximately reimbursing. $330,000 to the Butte Groundwater Fund. And then 51% comes back to the Upper Clarkport River Basin Aquatic and Terrestrial Fund. And in 2023, with the plan revision, we allocated those funds. The first $500,000 of that goes to Silverbow Creek Restoration for life parks and NRDP to lead ecological restoration activities on Silverbow Creek. The remaining funds were allocated to the Greenway Service District and the Greenway Trail. 80% of it goes there, and then 10% each goes to Warm Springs Creek and Browns Gulch. So that's how this money will be reimbursed. I will let you know that in the Greenway Trail allocation, we provided $2.5 million to the Greenway Trail with the provision that if there wasn't enough money coming back from the Parrot, that the program would make a recommendation to the trustee about where the remaining money could come from. So in this case, it would be a little over $2 million, where that money can come from within the fund, where it would have the least amount of impact to the resources. We do know since the last revision, we can pull that money from the interest that has been earned since we allocated the last interest. So we could pull the money from that would be our recommendation to the trustee, is that we use interest to make sure the Greenway Service District gets the funding they need to complete their trail. So we will be doing that when we
Talk about the 2.5 million.
Yes, yeah. So it's not gonna come from a watershed, or any projects that have already been, that, where the funds have been allocated. It will come from unallocated interest. And are there any questions on the Parrot reimbursement?
Like that.
Well, with that, we are done, so we can.
Yeah, so with that, any public comment on this presentation or comment from the council? Either in person or online? But like the silence there. Okay, hearing that, I'd entertain a motion of adjournment.
I so move.
So moved by Nick, seconded by. Gonna give me a second. Margie, okay, Margie second. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We're so adjourned. Okay.